Chapter 26, Counting Down the Days, Lily. X. Day 1. This was the hospitality she was expecting from the Shinigami. The nice prisoner outfit they gave her was rather itchy, especially the collar, and provided no warmth inside the cold cells, she means guest room. Their food is some of the most delicious dishes she'll get to eat, or so she heard from Mashiro, but since they haven't bothered to give her anything to eat, she'll put it on her pending list. She actually wouldn't mind eating anything right now. The entertainment in the meantime is giving her a bit of a headache. So far, the entertainment has left her with a bruised eye, her only good eye, a bust lip and a few more bruises around her face. Did she say hospitality? Hostility was the word she wanted to use. Can you blame her for mixing up the words? The punching got her head spinning. This was the sort of thing she was expecting the Shinigami to treat a hollow, a dangerous Arrancar class hollow like herself to be exact. The beating should have been obvious the moment the silver-haired shrimp and his captain took her towards an interrogation room with white walls, a table, chairs, and handcuffs. Oh wait, they're special, Kido handcuffs. The Shinigami have quite the numbers of locks ready for her. So when they strap her up and started their interrogation, the first thing she saw was the upcoming fist from Captain Suifong, and that beating has gone for the next 10 minutes before the petite captain asked a question, but when she said nothing then the beating would start over again, and that has been going on for the last 2 hours. I want answers. Suifong pulls the girl up by the hair. Zangetsu's locations. Where is it? Let me see. Lily wonders if the captain can tell that she's glaring at her, probably not because of how swollen her right eye is. He's in Hueco Mundo. Her answer wasn't exactly what the woman wanted. Suifong gave the patch of Lily's hair a hard yank. No sarcasm, Arrancar. I want actual details. She roughly let go of the girl's hair and walked towards the other side of the table to sit down. Fine, let's forget about Zangetsu and let's talk about something more important, the Hollow Army. Hollow Army? Sorry, I've seen no army. Lily acted oblivious to the anger that's slowly waving off from the Shinigami captain and looked over to her small-size companion instead. So, Lieutenant Hitsugaya, is there a story to why it seems they stripped you from your rank? Toshiro was leaning against the wall behind his captain with his arms crossed before he unfolded them and walked towards her with a more tranquil attitude. You can blame Zangetsu for it. He stated the fact so calmly that Lily almost believed him. Ichigo. Almost believe him. You're blaming Ichigo for losing your job. What sort of half-baked story is that? Still not lashing at her, she looked at Suifong and smirked at her. I find it hilarious how your lieutenant is acting like a better captain than you. Suifong looked like she wanted to lash out or mutilate her. Or kill her. Whichever she gets to do first. My failed attempts at killing Zangetsu began showing and ended up costing the lives of thousands of humans. Central 46 then decided that I should receive a punishment. They stripped my rank and made me into Suifong's lieutenant. Oh. The lime-haired girl smirked and looked at the 2nd Division captain. They gave you a lieutenant? Ha! What? Did the last one quit on you? Her smirk dropped as she saw the glare on the captain intensify while Hitsugaya looked at the ground. Suifong spoke through clenched teeth. No. Zangetsu killed my previous lieutenant. Ichigo had never told her that. What? She knew Ichigo had unintentionally killed many people about 2 years ago in the park incident, but he never had killed a Shinigami before, as far as she knew or he had revealed to her. You're lying, he would have never done something like that. What's so hard to believe? Suifong leans back. Have you never expected the day our factions would cross paths? You should have seen it happen. It's only natural because where there are hollows, there'll be Shinigami and conflict will soon follow, and no matter how human you may look, you're still nothing but a hollow, a monster that does nothing but eat souls. She waited for some sassy replies from the girl before continuing, but her lieutenant opened his mouth first. What do you think of us? The lime-haired teen doesn't know if Toshiro's tired of seeing her getting beat up or if Suifeng's tired of beating her up. Or maybe they're trying a new method to get her talking. She cocks one of her eyebrows up and smirks slightly. What's going on here? Weren't you beating the answers out of me? No, wait, first came the beating, then you asked your questions. When both Shinigami's expressions haven't changed from her comment, she shows them a more somber mood and expression. You want my honest opinion on what? On the Shinigami? I don't have any biased opinions on any of you, believe it or not, I learned that not every Shinigami is the same. They're all different, just like us. You all see us as monsters, but some of us are actually different. Oh yeah, for sure. Suifeng commented, and her lieutenant ignored it. Maybe that's true, but it doesn't change the fact that we need to do our job. Do you know why we have to purify hollows? When Toshiro saw a nod, it surprised him at the fact that she knew. How? Feeling tired, Lily sighed and sank into her chair. I'm not saying anything anymore. You're trying to get answers out of me and I won't talk. I'd rather have you guys do your bad cop and good cop routine or the beating instead. Like she said, the green-haired hollow never opened her mouth again, but the Shinigami never raised their hands on her. They asked questions, Suifeng tried threatening her, they tried the good cop bad cop routine, but she kept her lips zipped. So by the end of the day, as they kept her there for almost 5 hours with no food, the Shinigami took her back to her cell. As Suifeng and Toshiro walked back to the second division, a rare moment of civil conversation bloomed between the two. She wasn't what I expected. Suifeng said honestly. I still remember Zangetsu and the other Arrancar from that day still. I expected she would be the same as them. She looked at her second seat and said, I'm surprised you tried nothing on her. I know you're desperate to find him, so I thought how now that we have none other than his lieutenant, you would try anything to know his whereabouts. Because now is all a matter of patience. Toshiro glared ahead of him. He's coming for her. Brought back to her cell, Lily found herself half bored to death. This place is all dark and creepy. Ha! I bet you that Okiura would love this place. Lily sighed and sat down. Should she try to talk to her? Hey, so what the hell are you going to do now? You're rather talkative. Can I ask why? Lily felt the pale version of herself shrugging her shoulders. What can I tell you? Seeing them make your face into smashed potatoes pisses me off. Because that face is also my face, and guess what, if it was me who they were dealing with, I would have kicked their asses. She rolled her swollen eye. Okay, let's go down the list. 1, both of them are captains so they're no joke. 2, our powers got sealed, so how the hell can we beat them? Fair point. Ugh, so, what's the plan? How are we getting out of here? She could choose to ignore her, but won't that cause more harm than good? Her head's full of headaches because of the beatings, but having her inner hollow whining would just add more fuel to the fire. Honestly, I have nothing. My powers got locked away, so I can't open a garganta or fight out of here. What do you think I should do? The pale-skinned Lily answers without missing a beat. Wait for Ichigo. When Lily raised an eyebrow, she sighed before yelling in frustration. Oh, come on. As if you're not thinking about it, your knight in white shining armor battling through a literal army to come rescue you. That's literally one of your fantasy dreams. Besides, there's nothing else for us to do but wait for him because you were such an idiot for following that stupid hollow. Seriously, who would? Now look at us, we're prisoners with no idea how to get out. Lily could have challenged the other woman's frustration, but, and surprisingly, maybe kindly answering her would be a better route. Well, sorry. Next time I'll ask the hentai Nico to teach me how to escape these kinds of scenarios. Doesn't mean she won't act any less sassy to her Zanpakuto's spirit. Fair point, Urahara-san or Yoruchi-sensei never taught us what to do if we got kidnapped. Getabashi. Yeah, no wonder why I don't wait, hold on, why are you calling the hentai Nico by her name? Because she's our teacher. Sheesh, dumbass, who taught you everything? When Lily didn't respond, she let a smirk reach her lips. That's what I thought, so you better call her by her name the next time you mention he. What's your name? Lily waited for any kind of reaction. Anger was on top of her list while at the bottom was exactly what she sensed, waving off the inner Lily was surprised with a bit of sadness. Can we please not do this? Wait, no. Ugh. Why the hell are you asking such a stupid question for? Her anger quickly replaced her blue feelings. Why the hell do you finally care about it? Ha! You have been rejecting me this entire time, so why do you care now? Because. Lily seems to understand now. Because you want me to care. You're a part of me I've been avoiding, and that has been hurting both of us, hasn't it? With no reply, she figured out that her inner hollow had ended their entire conversation right there. For whatever it may mean now, I'm sorry for trying to ignore you for this long. Why are you asking them for permission, Captain? Ichigo asked as he and Yumachika followed behind the 11th Division captain. 'Cause if I barge into the Arrancar's cell, the old man will finally have enough of my shit. If I do things the normal way, then the old man can't get pissed. Zaraki looked at his third seat. I heard that apparently the Arrancar they captured is strong but it doesn't compare to Zangetsu. You have been asking to fight one, and as long as it's not Zangetsu, I'll get you your matchup. Day 2. Day 2 of her imprisonment started off. In no way at what she expected. She had fallen asleep sometime last night after trying to talk to her Zanpakuto's spirit and woke up with a startle when the door to the cell burst open. She tries to wipe the sleep before quietly hissing at touching her bruised eye. Though her eye was half-lidded, she saw a small Shinigami with chin-length black hair get tossed by a couple of other more well-fitted Shinigami before shutting the door on him. W8. I'm not supposed to heal any prisoners. The Shinigami cried out in a surprising male voice despite his appearance, and someone from the other side of the door yelled back. Actually, thanks to the approval Captain Zaraki has, he wants the hollow to be at 100% before we take her. So do your job. Lily stared at the Shinigami's back for a few seconds before standing up and walking towards the cell. She could see the Shinigami's shoulders shaking and she wondered if it was because he's scared. She started tapping on the bar at a slow and haunting tempo. Well, she only said one word, and his shoulders started shaking worse. Looks like your friends toss you into the lioness den. Slowly and still shaking, Hanataro Yamada turns his head to look at the caged Arrancar. They're, not my friends. With a deadpan, Lily said, yeah, no shit. I saw how they toss you in here. So if they're not your friends, who are they? Just some acquaintance. When the girl kept her look, Hanataro looked away and rubbed his left arm. They're just a bunch of good-for-nothing punks that only enjoy picking on me. Bullying? She acted a bit more surprised. Someone is bullying you? Why are you getting bullied? You're both Shini. Lily closed her mouth. Just because they're Shinigami, doesn't mean they'll act nice to each other. We're having similar problems in Hueco Mundo too. She looked at the Shinigami and figured that perhaps his appearance was the reason for the bullying. She leans against the bars of her cells. Let me guess, you're a pushover. Hanataro looked bashful as he explained the reasons for the bullying. I don't think my looks are the reason for the bullying. It had become a sort of tradition for the 11th Division to bully members from the 4th Division because we're the opposite. The 11th Division focuses on fighting and the 4th Division focuses on healing. 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 Lily smacks her forehead. Medics. Ha. That's definitely something I'm going to install back at La Estrella after I get back there. Smiling, she extended a hand out to the Shinigami. Thanks for the idea. The name's Gingerbuck Lilinet. The Shinigami only moves his eyes to look at her hand and then back at her. She rolls her eye and stretches her hand further towards him. I'm not going to bite you or anything. Besides, at this moment you're stronger than me. Still hesitant, she jokes and says, come on now, don't tell me you're scared of the beaten-up, defenseless little girl now. But you're taller than me. Feeling braver, he got close and shook the girl's hands. Yamada Hanataro. Then he jumped back as the two members of the 11th Division knocked hard on the door and yelled from the other side. Are you done in there or what? Lily looked at the door. That's right. You said something about healing me. Why? Well, you see Gingerbuck-san. Shino-san, why are we ditching classes to go to the 11th Division? Yuki Ryanosuke, a black-haired boy with 3 circular hair clips on the left side and 2 on the right side of his hair with green eyes, asks his friend Madarame Shino, a black-haired girl with a scarlet piece of fabric sitting on top of her head. She's also the younger sister of Madarame Ikaku. Because I want to see the Arrancar that my loudmouth brother was bragging about yesterday at the dining table. She replied with a bit of anger. Ryanosuke rushed forward and lifted his arms to show his friend the academy's uniform. They're not going to let us pass because of these, you know. Waving off his concern, Shino says. Look, if we're lucky, then maybe everyone will be at the training field to see the match and we can sneak around, or we can just tell them we're scouting our future division. I thought we're going to join the 13th Division. For Kami's sake, Ryanosuke, I'm telling you to lie. Both students soon reached the 11th Division's barracks with no members walking around but could feel a strong tension in the air. Yuki gulped and nervously asked Shino if maybe they should do this next time, but the girls determined to see what their future enemies were capable of. She was ready to go inside, with or without Yuki, and searched for where the fight would happen when she heard someone call out to them, more precisely, to her. She turned around to see one of the 11th Division members she had gotten familiar with. Go Taiteshi was another typical member of the 11th Division, in which he looked more like a criminal than a Shinigami, what with his spiky black hair and mustache. He wasn't alone either. One of the 3 individuals he's with was another member of his division, someone she had never talked to, but the other 2 weren't from the 11th Division. One was a boy from the 4th Division. She recognized the bag he carried on his back as those ready-to-go medic bags the 4th Division uses. However, the other person she had never seen before, and it would be hard to miss someone with such hair color. Also, the girl was taller than the boy by possibly 9 inches. She's wearing a Shinigami outfit. Who the hell is she? When the girl looked forward, she saw the black mask fragment over her left eye. That's the Arrancar. Oi. Shino. Getting called out by Go Taiteshi, Shino moved her sights from the green-haired girl to the Shinigami. What you want, old man? You know, just because your brother's our 3rd seat, doesn't mean you can talk to us in any manner you want. Go Taiteshi came to a halt in front of the girl and crossed his arms. Why the hell are you here and not at the academy? Ryanosuke nervously answered. We're scouting divisions. At her friend's words, Shino pursed her lips to hold back an angry reply before she sighed and whispered. Ryanosuke, you're such a headache sometimes. She looked back at the 11th Division Shinigami and thundered. We're here because my brother couldn't keep his mouth shut about her. Lily had ignored mostly everything until now because, believe it or not, she was having a rather pleasant time talking with Hanataro. He's rather timid and hard to get him to talk, but asking simple questions about his division, which is probably his comfort zone, had him slowly opening up but had to stop once the other 2 Shinigami yelled at him for talking to the prisoner. She ignores the look the girl sent and focuses her gaze on the 11th Division barracks. She can't believe what's about to happen. There was another conversation that happened between the girl and Shinigami before rudely pushed by the other member of the 11th Division. As they led her out to the back of the building and into an enormous field, she felt on edge as hundreds of eyes followed her and was getting led towards the middle of the training field. Kami. Hanataro wasn't joking. In the middle of the field, she could see Captain Suifeng arguing with another fellow captain. You cannot, and I mean cannot, just bust out the prisoner to give your lieutenant a fight. Suifeng barked, glaring up at Captain Zaraki, who looked down at her with a smug grin. Actually, he pulls out the exact written permission from Central 46 and waves it in front of the short captain, irritating her even more. Thanks to this, Central 46 says I can. From over his shoulders, Yachiru happily added, yeah. Ken-chan got permission. What? She snatched the papers from his hands, read it and couldn't believe it. She won't believe that Central 46's allowing Captain Zaraki to use the hollow as some kind of sparring partner for his third seat. How the hell did you get them to approve of this? Even the stamp of approval was by the bottom left corner too. Who the hell did you threaten for this? Threaten? Kenpachi grinned at the woman's assumption. Didn't threaten anyone. I just walked into their fancy meeting and told them I wanted to test the hollow out. What the hell has Central 46 been doing lately? Suifeng's eyes found the Arrancar that was slowly being guided towards them. First, they want to hold off the execution of the Arrancar and now they're allowing her out. They're not treating her like a threat to Seoul society. When she looked back at Kenpachi, she saw a scowl on his face. From the sidelines, most lieutenants came to watch. Yumachika looked at Ichigo doing his pre-battle dance with a slightly disgusting look on his face. Ugh, what an ugly thing to do. I'm still having a hard time believing Ichigo's going to fight the Arrancar that Captain Ikamaru and Kaname capture. Shuhei said to the rest of the usual drinking group, but once he saw the hollow, he nodded in the hollow's direction. Or maybe he won't. The rest of the group, which had the usual drinking group plus Rukia, Momo, and Toshiro, looked over to where the man pointed at. Renji and IBA didn't know what that 9th Division lieutenant meant until they saw her and both of them froze. Kira noticed their reaction but ignored them to ask Ichigo a question, did you know your opponent was a girl? Just like his captain, the third seat had a scowl on his face before he started marching towards his captain, arriving as they brought the hollow in front of both captains. Oi, Renji, isn't that, IBA started and Renji finished for him, his eyes wide as saucers as he recognized the hollow. Yeah, that's his lieutenant. Renji clenched his jaw as he realized what this meant. If we have her, then that means he'll be coming for her. He looked at Toshiro from the corner of his eyes. It's all a matter of time for you, right, Captain Hitsugaya? Lily looked at Suifeng, who was looking at Kenpachi, who was also scowling in her direction and then looked at the bald Shinigami. So, she broke the silence. I'm apparently given a recess and allowed to stretch my legs because one of you wanted to fight me? Her eye landed on her Zanpakuton that Captain Zaraki held over his left shoulder. Captain. If his opponent was a woman, then Ichigo wouldn't mind taking the spar, but for a man to fight a girl? Kenpachi ignored his third seat and walked up to the girl. Looking down at her with a frown, he says, that's right. He points a thumb to his third seat, you're going to fight him, how do you feel about that? Lily snorted, and she wished the Kido did not chain her arms so that she could cross her arms over her chest. Looks like nothing special. She looked at the man in front of her, and with the little information that Yoruchi and Ichigo had told her, she figured this was the infamous Kenpachi. Why don't you take your chance with me, Captain Zaraki? The 11th Division captain lifted one of his eyebrows before grinning. Oh, you know my name. Does that make me as infamous as Zangetsu in Hueco Mundo? Again, she snorted before replying coolly. Oh please, don't flatter yourself. You're just on our "don't fight him because he's an idiot" list. Suifeng wanted to smack the back of the Arrancar head to see if that would fix her. Even she knows the monster Kenpachi is and wouldn't treat him any less than a threat. She watched as Kenpachi lost his grin and swung the hollow's rapier with the point of the blade set inches away from the girl's last remaining eye. The action should have scared her, maybe even gotten her to jump back a little, but the girl held her ground and kept her cool demeanor. He moved the tip of the blade a little closer to the girl's eye and she was ready to intervene in an assault from Captain Zaraki to the Arrancar, but before she could, the green-haired girl broke her cold act. As if you'll hurt me. Lily smacks her Zanpakuton out of her face to scowl at Kenpachi. You won't fight an unarmed opponent. Because if you did, then you would have killed my captain instead of giving him a chance. Captain? Kenpachi asked back, feeling a bit lost. Until he realized how there's been only one person who has fought him and still lives. Ha! As if I'll find pleasure in killing Zangetsu while he's defenseless. Looking at the hollow with more energetic vigor, he said, so Zangetsu's your captain, eh? How's the brat doing? Did he get any stronger? My captain's fine, and don't worry about that last part. He's going to repay the favor for the scar. Kenpachi smirked and rested the girl's Zanpakuton over his shoulders again. The brat's mad about that little scar. He opens up his uniform to show the girl the gift Ichigo had left him with. He gave me a pretty badass scar and I'm not complaining about it. Lily looked at Kenpachi's X-shaped scar. From his left shoulder to his right hip ran one scar while the other one was much smaller and started on his right chest and ended just above his right hip. She couldn't stop the small smirk that reached her lips. Looks like he got you better. That he did and I can't wait to return the favor, but that's between him and I. Skillfully, he flipped the Arrancar's rapier and held it by the tip. She dropped her smile and took a deep breath. What's the point of this? Why do you want me to fight so badly? My third seat is feeling left out that a few of his buddies have already had a round with you guys. I'm sorry, what? She narrowed her only eye in disbelief. This isn't for you, but for your whiny third seat. You pulled me out of prison for this. She looked at Captain Suifeng, so you get to beat me for answers and he can get me out to fight some whiny baby? She looked back at Kenpachi and pointed a finger at him. Isn't that abusing your powers? How the hell are you even a captain? I killed the last one. What? She lowers her finger and takes in the captain's expression. The man clearly stated how he killed the last captain as if he was explaining the weather with a bored look. How can you just say that? Listen Hollow, I don't know how your kind runs your place, but the Shinigami clearly do it differently. There's 3 options on how someone can become a captain: either take the captain proficiency test, get a personal recommendation or trial by combat. Suifeng crosses her arms and scowls. Most of us aren't a fan of the last one, but it's been there since the establishment of the Godei 13 and that's part of our history that we won't get rid of. That's funny, isn't it? They're supposed to be the better beings. Never gone through what the Hollows went through. They call our actions animalistic and think we're savages, but that's what we have to go through to get where we are today. But their excuse? Apparently it is part of their history. She was about to open her mouth and asked Captain Suifeng to take her back to her cell when the bald man opened his mouth. Just admit you're scared and stop looking for excuses. Ichigo said, looking rather annoyed. Excuse me? Lily glares at the man. I'm not making excuses for anything. I'm just using my head. I know when there's a reason to fight. Tell me one then. When? That's a tricky question. You don't need a reason to fight. Sometimes you need to feel a little selfish and fight to enjoy yourself. When Ichigo remembers what the Arrancar said about the 2nd Division captain's kind hospitality, he said, how about you use our spar to get rid of some steam? I'm sure Captain Suifeng built plenty of it. Lily clenches her hands. Hanataro tried his best to heal her, but the most he could do seemed to speed up her natural recovery. She could barely keep her one eye open and her lips were now good, but she could feel a bruise forming. So it's safe to say that the Shinigami's right about all the steam Captain Suifeng has caused, but that's not a genuine reason to fight anyone. She took a deep breath, looked at the petite captain and tried to once again ask to be taken back to her cell before Ichigo opened his mouth. Forget it. I will not waste my time in convincing someone like you. He turned around and started walking away, but not before throwing one last comment at the Arrancar. You should start counting down your days since no one's going to come save you. I know that for sure. How do you know that? She took a step forward, her hand itching to snatch her Zanpakuton and put a hole between the bald man's eyes. Because why would anyone come to save you? You really think the rest of the Arrancar will waste their time saving you? I wouldn't throw my life away for someone like you. Ignoring her eye as it stung when she narrowed it, Lily took a few more steps towards Ichigo. And by that, what do you mean? If he says that one word, she'll shove her Zanpakuton up where the sun doesn't shine. Why would they risk their lives or put any effort into saving someone like you? If we captured you once, then you'll end up getting caught by us again and all that effort went to waste rescuing someone weak like you. He started walking again. I also bet that whoever trained you, feels disappointed in wasting their time on you. Two things just piss her off. The first one was that word. Weak. Why that word? Why is it always that word that bothers her? Was it because of what Barragan had said to her all those years ago? Or is it because everyone in her little family had mentioned her weak status? Barragan's words left behind a mental reminder that she was the weakest of the group, but she could always ignore that. But what she couldn't ignore was everyone's comment. Lily looked at Stark once the Hollow left their office after giving them the most recent incident. Maybe I should help Minos Park. Did Yoruchi finally say you're strong enough to go off on your own? Stark didn't look at her as he said that, his eyes were more engrossed in the report he was reading so he didn't see the scowl on her face that his words caused. I won't know if I got any stronger if I don't test myself out. She saw him hesitate for a second and thought he'd let her go, but he said nothing. Which meant he had ended their conversation by retreating into silence, but before it could settle in, she said. I'm not weak. She notices him so easily, his orange hair stuck out amongst the hollows, so, station near me again, Lieutenant Kurosaki. He took her comment as an invitation to walk closer to her. Some of Barragan's men had snuck through our front lines and apparently found the part of Minos Park that we're standing on top of. Are they planning on attacking us from below? When she saw an affirmative nod, she looked at him with a slight shock expression on her face. Then what are you doing here instead of going down there and stopping them? A bit embarrassed, Ichigo looks away and says, Rose and Love are guiding a small platoon of hollows to take care of them, but in case one of them sneak past them and reach the city, I'll be here to protect you. Touching, but, I can protect myself just fine. You say that, but I don't know if you're powerful enough. She presses her lips together before taking a page from Stark's book and retreating into silence. Not wanting to argue with Ichigo. What are you sulking about now, child? Ulquiorra's impassive voice reaches her ears, and she looks up from another report to greet the man. Here to turn in your report? She asked, and seconds later he was pulling out his eye before destroying it, allowing her to see his most recent memories. When that seemed done, she was expecting Ulquiorra to leave, but he stood there for a few more seconds. Are you feeling caged? He asked, probably. Assuming why she was moping. Something like that. She answered back but found that Ulquiorra wouldn't leave until he got an actual explanation. She sighed before confessing. I feel like no one believes me when I tell them I'm strong enough to defend myself. I want to be a bit out there by myself, you know. I want to go to Minos Park without Stark worrying about me or walk alone in the city without your lieutenant acting as a bodyguard who doesn't want to leave my side because he doesn't know if I can defend myself. Then prove to them you're strong. Maybe that way they'll stop seeing you as weak. Okay, first off, I was being subtle as to not use that word, sorry if you couldn't catch up with that, and second off, I am strong, she frowns before continuing, I just need to get stronger. He nodded before leaving without saying another word. Rage fuels her as she walks through the halls of Sales Division before she slams open the door to Sales' main laboratory. Sale. She has called out the man's name with so much fury that any dangerous hollow would turn into a coward, but the man in question slumps his shoulders and lowers down the scalpel. He turns around and offers a smile. Do you need something, Lily-chan? If not, please leave. I'm in the middle of a possible scientific breakthrough. Unless you're here to watch. That's not going to make me turn away. Sale drops his smile before rolling his eyes and turning back to the strap hollow on his operating table. Oh please, are we doing that again? You know damn well that you need to stop with all of this. She gestures to the entire room that looks to better belong to some madman. She could see the organs of an unlucky hollow in jars that she couldn't save in time. With a sigh, Sale lays down the scalpel and turns around. Lily, how many times must we go over this? They gave me full authorization to continue my research on hollows. You should be glad that I don't use any of our hollows. I get that. But, look at yourself. You have blood all over your clothes. You didn't even bother to wear a scrub. I will not waste my time changing clothes. Dissecting a hollow gets me better results when they're still fresh. That last word gave her a pause. Fresh. She rushed over to the operating table and shoved Sale out of the way to see that his most recent victim was still alive. Sale, why the hell is he alive? Don't put him through such misery. How else am I going to see the organ's reactions if he's dead? I need to understand hollows' anatomy better, and when they're alive, I get better results. Sighing, he continues, but, if you want him dead so he won't suffer, then please, do him the honor. She turns around to see him handle the scalpel to her. In her rage, she forgot to grab her Zanpakuton. Maybe then she could kill the hollow a little more painlessly. When she didn't make a move to grab the tool from Sale's hand, he offered to do it for her before she shook herself up and grabbed the medical knife and positioned the scalpel over the hollow's mask. Seeing her hesitation, Sale leers over her shoulder at the strap hollow. He won't feel a thing, Lily-chan. I put him under the effects of a heavy anesthesia that I have made. He probably won't even feel his death. When her hand started shaking slightly, Sale grabbed it. We can do this together. He started slowly raising her hand. And we'll make it quick. Before he could do anything else, she dropped the scalpel and started walking away. There's that weak reaction I was expecting from you. That was his last comment to her before she heard the scalpel cutting the hollow open, and she soon started rushing out of the room. To her, it almost feels like the world doesn't want her to forget just how weak she was, and it has to remind her. She also can't stop damaging her own self-esteem when comparing herself with Stark, who has such a tremendous amount of power, amazing regenerating abilities like Okiura, the cleverness of Sale, or being born as the perfect being like Ichigo, but she wasn't weak. However, the one who said otherwise was her. Please stop joking with me. She took a huge gulp of air into her lungs but started having a coughing fit when the sharp pain on her left side started acting up. Today was Minoli and Loli turn to train with Mashiro, which left her to train with Yoruchi, and unlike her sister figure, she didn't hold her punches. Mashiro had trained her already in everything she knew, but she wanted to learn more from someone who was far better than her sister, but she didn't ask for her new teacher to lie about her growth either. Yoruchi didn't look too out of breath as her, but the woman had a few sweat dripping down her forehead. Trust me kid, I'm not. She groans softly and lays back on the sand to look at the moon. Thanks for the encouragement, but I prefer honesty. It seems like you can't tell when someone's been honest with you. Yoruchi moves her head to block the view of the moon and smiles down at her. Believe me when I'm telling you how you have potential. In what? She asked before barraging her with dispiriting answers. I'm not too skillful with my Zanpakuton. I'm a complete novice in the arts of Hakuda. Not the fastest, strongest, or the smartest. See? I have no potential. Yoruchi didn't look so convincing and put a finger under her chin before a smile came forth. Show me that neat trick you can do. She snorts a bit at how excited a full-grown woman looks at seeing her cheap magic trick. Sure. She smiles back and raises her hands before decorating them with espinas. You got better at that. Thanks, your Ryatsu training help. She stops focusing on her espinas and goes back to looking at the moon. If Yoruchi wasn't in front of her sight. That's really amazing, you know. What is? My party trick. That party trick is part of your spiritual pressure, and by the looks of it, I think you got blessed and were born with an elemental representative. When Yoruchi saw her widened eye, she let her head a little lower. I only know of 2 people in all of Soul Society that are just like you, although they represent fire and ice. You're probably the first Arrancar to be born like this. She raised her hand and created a tiny espinas which only caused the Shinigami woman to smirk. You have a gift, Lily. Not everyone has the potential for having almost perfect control over their own Ryatsu, and it's only going to get better with my training. First, we're gonna go over to Urahara and have him help you figure out your element, and then I'm going to train you to the bone. Got it? So you better not quit on me, because I'm going to make sure you change, transform and find some self-realization in you. Yoruchi reached out to her. My little dragonfly. Yoruchi helped her out, really helped her out. For 2 years she had to mix her training with helping Stark around his division and creating law and order in La Estrella. She wasn't walking alone in her path, either. Yoruchi was with her every step of the way, and each day she could see how Yoruchi was proud of her. Which is the second thing that pisses her off. She would never disappoint Yoruchi, but she would be if she didn't take this chance to test herself out. You running away, Shinigami? No, I'm just not going to waste my time hurting a girl. Oh. Now you're making excuses. Scared that a girl might just kick your ass. That stopped Ichigo and made him turn around to look at the confident look on the girl's face. So you grew a backbone, huh? He started tapping his Zanpakuton over his shoulder, walking back towards the girl. If we do this, I will not enjoy hurting you. He stops in front of her and smirks, so I'm going to be holding back against you since you won't be worth taking seriously. Lily looks back at the man with a smirk. You'll regret not taking me seriously. Watching the scene in front of him, Zaraki laughed. Looks like you're going to get your fight. He was about to hand over Lily's Zanpakuton before he remembered the only condition that Central 46 wanted him to follow. Hey! Put the seal on her and get rid of those cuffs and collar too. 2 members of the Kido Corps nodded before walking towards her, and when Lily saw the 2 men approach, her body tensed and was ready to defend herself before Kenpachi stopped her. Sorry brat, but you're going to get a seal on you. Central 46 can't leave you loose with full power. The seal these 2 will put on you will be the same as what captains and lieutenants need to use when traveling to the world of living. Don't worry about my 3rd seed either, he'll get the same seal as you. So both of you will only be able to use 30% of your Ryatsu. Before the Shinigami would take her cuffs and collar off, they placed a skull-shaped seal over her left forearm. Once that got placed, they removed her cuffs before finally moving over to her collar, and once that came off she sighed in relief, feeling slightly free before Kenpachi made a gesture to grab her Zanpakuton from him, and her short sweet moment got ruined. That's right, I'm supposed to kick your baldy's ass. Don't take my man so lightly, girl. He's tougher than you think. Lily could hear a somewhat tone of respect in the captain's voice. Fine, but if I win, I want a reward. And what would that be? More meals a day. I was wearing a shirt when y'all captured me. I want that shirt back. Raising an eyebrow in disbelief, Kenpachi says, you can ask for something more than just clothing. The girl said nothing besides giving him a stern look. Fine, I'll get your shirt back. Suifone wanted to take the girl back to her cell by force, but a look from Captain Kenpachi challenged her to do so, and she knew that was impossible by this point. Not only because the 11th Division captain would interfere, but also because it looks like the Arrancar wanted to let loose, too. She looked around the gathered Shinigami and realized besides them too, there was also Captain Kairaku, Unohana and Yukitake here too. With 5 captains here, the Arrancar won't have time to escape. Handing Lily her rapier, Kenpachi looked at both fighters before smirking. Alright, the rules will be simple. No killing. That was all he said before walking and taking his place over to where the 11th Division was standing with his men cheering for their third seat's easy victory. Sui Feng took her leave and went over to where the other 3 captains stood watching. Left alone now, Lily and Ichigo share a few seconds of silence. No killing. Lily said as she took a few practice swings. So I can break a few of your bones then. With one last swing, she took a stance with her back straight and left arm behind her back, her right hand close to her chest while the tip of her rapier pointed to the sky. Showing a slight interest in the Arrancar's unique stance, Ichigo took his. As if you could. Lily studies the man's strange way of holding his sword in his left hand on a normal grip and the sheath in his right held in a reverse grip. A rather strange stance for a dual wielder. She put one foot back and was ready to make a quick thrust towards her opponent to test the water before the resonance in her head spoke. What the hell are you doing? About to kick a Shinigami's ass? Rolling her eye, the albino Lily said, I know that, I've been watching this entire time, but what I want to know is why the hell are you using your Zanpakuton for? What? Feeling somewhat confused, she frowned softly. What or why? She couldn't finish her thought before taking a side step from Ichigo's sudden attack. His right arm had come down in a fast downward swing. Knowing the dangers of a dual wielder, she blocks his left attack, but the man skillfully wins over and parries her sword away. Seeing an opening, Ichigo swings back his right arm and hits Lily over the side of her ribs before using the opening to swing back his Zanpakuton. Lily recovered from the first attack and took a leap back to dodge the man's sword before retaking her stance. Sheesh, some people say go before the match starts, you know. You must be blind to have missed the obvious sign that the fight started. Lily didn't waste her time to berate the Shinigami before she moved into the defensive from the Shinigami's relentless strikes. She thought moving her leading right foot back to put more space between them was the right move, but he wasn't allowing any gap between them and each step she took back he had moved 2 more forwards. Her eye carefully followed each swing and step the man did before she found an opening in his attack. They lock blades but this time around she allows the man to continue to pressure down her rapier and let him power her cut. She relaxes her grip before rolling up her elbow, allowing his Zanpakuton to slide down her sword while bringing hers up and then coming down just as fast across the man's chest. The girl's agility was much faster than he expected, but didn't surprise him as much. He moves his sheath and stops the girl's rapier above his chest's pec and swings back his left arm. Sensing the danger coming, Lily gathers Ryatsu at the tip of her Zanpakuton. Punta. Ichigo knew the girl hadn't done a thrust motion, but still he felt as though the girl's sword had dug an inch into his body, but what he felt wasn't the normal pain of steel piercing his body. There was a burning sensation, a horrible burning sensation. Abandoning his attack, Ichigo jumps back and checks the wound on, no, scratch that, in his chest. There was a clear sign of a puncture in his chest. Rather lucky, it seems like the Arrancar's attack only dug half an inch into his chest. He looks back at her to see her back to her stance. You almost had me. At his words, the girl lifts a brow up before thrusting and calling out the same attack, only that this time he got to see just what hit him. He steps to the side to dodge the green light that started from the girl's rapier and watches it go a few more meters past him before stopping. Correction, I didn't have you. I chose not to kill you. Lily replied coolly, really showing her opponent that the gloves were off. Ichigo wanted to ask what she had just done but laughed it out instead. He calmed down before removing his katana hilt's pommel, dug 2 fingers into the vial of healing ointment before rubbing some across the cut and hole. Lily started worrying about Ichigo when he started laughing maniacally and kept getting worse as the man started doing a strange dance. Feeling a little of concern, she lowered her sword and took a cautious step forward. Hey yo! Ha! I take everything I said back, Arrancar. I thought you would have been a disappointment. Pointing his sheath at her, he says, but you show promise. So I'm not holding back now. Believing in the man's words, Lily took her stance. Drop your Zanpakuton, right now. What? Ichigo rushed back to assault her faster than she could reply to her spirit. Crap. She started defending herself more desperately. The Shinigami seemed to have figured out her Zanpakuton's ability, since every time she tries to align an attack by putting space between them, he closes their gaps instantly. Forgetting to use punta, she thought of a different strategy but couldn't figure out what to do. She never took her Zanpakuton training any further than to defend herself, and that was her fault. All she could do was parry and take pivot steps to dodge. Seeing a left swing coming, Lily blocks and slides her blade across his while closing in. Ichigo grinned at her straightforward attack. He could see how she had become reckless and desperate. He swung his left hand and hit the girl across her ribs again. Rolling across the floor, Lily clutched her ribs before looking up and blocking a double-down swing strike from the Shinigami with both her hands on her sword, but while that attack was blocked, the low kick wasn't. While the fight rages on, by the sides, the group of lieutenants chat among themselves. Shuhei looked at the battle with his arms crossed and a gentle frown on his face. Ichigo's taking the girl seriously now and has her on the ropes. Actually, I think he can finish this fight any minute he wants now, he said as the battling lieutenant hit the Arrancar again with his sheath instead of his sword. He must want to see more from her, Yumachika said before adding with an unbiased tone in his voice. The girl showed a beautiful attack, stance and everything. She can do more. Right? Kira looked towards the group that had recently been to the human world. Well, I'm not sure, Iba said, glancing at Renji to see him still shocked at the revelation of which hollow they captured. So the answer to Blonde's question came from a certain ex-captain. She had 3 years to grow, and after what happened to her, she had to grow. Toshiro answered Kira, watching the duel with the same indifference as Yumachika. What happened to her, Captain Hitsugaya? Rukia asked, forgetting that the boy genius hates having to correct others from his demotion. That's Lieutenant Hitsugaya, Kuchiki-san. Toshiro mutters under his breath before saying, 3 years ago, on the first day we met the Arrancar, that hollow sacrificed her life to protect Zangetsu from your brother. He turns to look at Rukia. Your brother hit her with a powerful kido that left a hole in her stomach. So saying the least, she should have died, but miraculously she survived. A hole in her stomach? Certain memories of that day came rushing to Rukia's head. Looks like I get to return the favor. Was it revenge that she heard from his tone of voice that day? Don't take this the wrong way, I'm not trying to kill you, but this is my way of returning your brother's generosity for what he did towards Lily first. Or was it perhaps retribution? She didn't know, and that started giving her mixed feelings about them again. Was there something more? I need to find out. She kept a mental note and promised herself that she'll try to learn a bit about this Arrancar before her execution. Where would you put her? Captain Yukitake asked the assembled captains, each with a slightly different opinion. 5th seat. Suifeng said, listing everything she saw wrong. She needs to polish her swordsman's skills, got a sloppy stance and needs to be more on the offense. Her one good attack seemed to be more of a one-hit kill shot, so if her opponents can escape, they'll never let her do it again. However, her eyes follow the girl as she dances around her opponent's swings before taking a huge leap back and launching herself before thrusting her sword, grazing the man's cheek and escaping with a pivot step before Ichigo could close his weapons around her. I'll admit that her footing skills are better than I expected. Unohana couldn't add more to the criticism of the 2nd Division captain, so instead settled to praise the girl's footwork too. She had definitely avoided the worst possible injuries and suffered slight bruises than she had from the start of the match, thanks to her footing. I would place her at 6th seat. Kyoraku watched lazily, but his sights were eagle-eyed sharp. She's not used to her Zanpakuton. No. He watched a messy attempt meant to cut Ichigo across his chest, but the girl's sword is not made for deep slashing. She doesn't know how to use her Zanpakuton. Her sword's obviously not made for deep slashing and locking blades, it's more for thrusting and shallow cuts. Sixth seat for me too. He watched the Arrancar's beautiful dance of avoiding strikes with her footwork, and when they yet again entered another blade lock, Ichigo surprised the girl when he pinned Lily's rapier with his sheath before swinging his Zanpakuton. And the match ends. Lily couldn't pull her Zanpakuton and couldn't help but watch as the Shinigami's blade closed in on her at almost slow motion. She thought perhaps time has slowed down for her to think about the good life she had and not to have a conversation with her spirit. Let go of your sword, dumbass. But then how am I supposed to fight? Lily. The spirit called out her name in a rage. You don't know how to fight with your Zanpakuton because you ignored us. Neglected us. You avoided us by learning a different way of fighting that didn't involve us. And that's, okay, we didn't ask to be born, and you didn't ask for us either, she had quieted down towards the end before speaking back louder. Drop your Zanpakuton and fight the way Yoruchi-sensei taught you. Feeling as time has returned to its normal pace, Lily glares at the approaching danger. I'm sorry. She lets go and catches the Shinigami's swords. She ignores the sparks that her Hiero and the steel blade cause when they clash before hitting Ichigo across his wounded chest with a right cross punch. Ichigo huffed as the air in his lungs gets knocked out of him, but a hit like that didn't stun him enough. He gathers his bearings before looking back in time to see the Arrancar let go of his sword to close in on him before thrusting her knee towards his chin and hitting him. If it wasn't for his enhanced strength, then an attack like that would have knocked him out, but before his days as a Shinigami, he used to roam the streets of Arrancar as a brawler. However, back then, none of his opponents were Arrancar. So the girl's steel-hard skin hit differently and caused him seconds to recollect himself, plenty of time for a follow-up attack. But once he recovered, he found Lily still standing from the spot she kicked him from. What's this? Not using the opening you made to get a few more hits? Ichigo asks her while massaging his jaw to see if it's shattered or dislocated. You're not going to get any more lucky hits like those again. Lily started tapping the ground with her tiptoes. You're right, lucky hits won't happen again. She switched to her dominating right foot and kept tapping. Because these next hits won't have any luck in them. Ichigo thought the girl's lucky hits made her act arrogant, but once he saw the girl's focused stare, he realized now she was going to be fighting in her preferred method. He tightened his grips around his weapons and took a stance, but Lily closed in before he could raise his hands and had spring up a left knee kick that hit him on the chin before bringing back her foot again to follow up with a nasty hook kick. Moving with her left leg's momentum, she kicks herself off the ground with her right foot and delivers a high side kick. If her last kick didn't break his jaw, then the 3-hit combo he just suffered started shattering parts of it. Shit. Seeing the girl still following her right foot motion, Ichigo realized she was coming back around with another kick. He swung his Zanpakuton, but Lily stopped her motion and kicked his sword away, so as that failed, he went with his sheath, but the girl spun around with the ball of her left foot and raised her right foot high. With her facing him, Ichigo could see that the girl set in tanking his attack so that she could go for an axe kick, and if there was something those last kicks told him, it was that it wasn't worth sneaking a hit on her while receiving worse damage. He jumped back, abandoning his attacks and avoiding hers. When the girl's axe kick hit, the ground shattered around her foot. That would have been nasty. Lily ignored his comment and would have sonido to close their distance, but the man had opened his mouth. What's your name, Arrancar? He asks without dropping his guard. Was the Shinigami asking questions to buy himself some time to recover from a possible concussion? Why do you care? Grinning, the bald Shinigami said, because there's a custom in the 11th division about giving your opponent your name as a last courtesy so they know the name of the one who brought death to them. Is it also a custom to bully members from another division? Lily glares at the Shinigami, who frowns back at her words. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the way the 11th Division mistreats the 4th Division. Scowling deeper, Ichigo says, why do you care about the conflict between our divisions when they don't concern you? They shouldn't, that's true, but from what I heard, it's rather stupid. And I think you should all stop, and to make sure you do, I'll kick your ass for the promise that your division will leave the 4th alone. An Arrancar fighting for the Shinigami, who would have guessed, but, fine. I, Ichigo Madarame, 3rd seat of Zaraki's division, will keep our promise if you give me a fight to always remember. Ichigo slams Hosokumaru's hilts and its sheath. Grow, Hosokumaru. Once released, his katana took the form of a Kikuchi Yari with a waxwood shaft. Before she could introduce herself, she noticed how this was the perfect opportunity for a bluff that could delay her execution for a few more days or 2. Lillinette Stark, lieutenant to Captain Kurosaki and daughter of the king of Hueco Mundo, will give you the fight you're wishing for. Her arms and legs glow a transparent light green color before clashing with the man. The sound of clashing blade and iron skin echoed through the silent field as every Shinigami heard her declaration. XX. Omake. Set 3 days after the last Omake chapter. A Bat's Diary, 4. Let's go again. Mashiro asks while sweating bullets, hunched over and out of breath. Looking at her conditions, he turns his back and starts heading to his jigai. You're out of breath and I can sense that you're low on Ryatsu. Besides, we have sparred for hours now. And that wasn't an understatement. Everyone else has left, and it seems like it's a little past curfew, most likely the kids were already asleep and the other 2 visors have left while Mashiro had option to stay longer. We trained enough for the day and will train another day, Kuna-san. So go home and rest. Come on. Don't be like that. He didn't need to turn around to see that she was flailing her arms over her head. With a quiet sigh, he looks over his shoulders. Sparring while fatigue won't be good for you. You may damage your health. He pointed out her condition in hopes to make the woman realize that she had reached her limit for the day. He seemed to forget who he was talking to. No, no, no. I can keep going. My best time with my mask on is 15 hours. So a few spars shouldn't have worn me down so fast. 15 hours. That's quite extraordinary and very impressive. He told her dully. Why do you sound like you're not really impressed? Because I'm not. For you, Visards, 15 hours may sound like some achievement, but I can see clearly that you don't train with your mask on. But we do. When he asked her about their training, he didn't have to listen much for him to realize what was wrong. Kuna-san, leaving your mask on for the rest of the day while reading manga, running on an exercise bike and light sparring isn't training. With a scowl, Mashiro said, but those are great ways to stay focused on keeping our masks on. And yet in our spars, you don't last longer than 5 minutes. He pointed out, and she quickly responded by puffing her cheeks. You're literally taking the spars too seriously, you know. If I took them seriously too, the results would still be the same. He interrupted her, his words creating another scowl. The only thing different would be the speed your mask would shatter. Kuna-san, your mask will break if you ever go against an opponent of higher caliber who isn't holding back. Your restrained sparring matches will be a hindrance to you in future battles. So I will clap for your time achievement, but won't acknowledge that you have trained. Seeing her frown, he figured how he must have soured her mood, and with not knowing how to deal with a crabby person, he turned to leave, but then he heard an exaggerated groan. He stops to look as she sat down on the ground cross-legged with an elbow on her leg and chin planted on her palm. Can you help me train? She asked him while not looking at him. Rather childish. He thought. Very well, but we'll do it some other time. He made a move to leave, but Mashiro seems to want him still around. Nay, you tired? No. Sleepy? No. But you're heading back to your room? Of course. To do what? Meditate. She turns to look at him, somewhat mystified. You don't fall asleep while doing that? She asked him rather surprised, and it took him a second to remember that most likely a super-hyper person like Mashiro would either fall asleep or abandon the meditation to bother someone else. Hardly, although you should try meditating while wearing your hollow mask, maybe that would help. Pondering his subjection, she pouted after agreeing and thought that perhaps now she'll let him leave, but then, from her mouth, came a request he never expected to hear from her. Hey, since we both don't have nothing else to do, wanna sit on the roof with me? Her head rested on her forearm as she patiently waited for an answer he couldn't figure out how to reply. He would not be making an excuse, but he's going to be stating a fact. It's nighttime. I know that, that's why I'm asking. What are we planning on doing? At that she smiled but pressed her lips into her palm to hide it. You gotta come with me to find out. With a nod, Mashiro jumped up to her feet in a fluid motion and started heading upstairs while telling him how she'll wait for him at the roof. He had a running thought of making an excuse, but as he walked and entered his jigai, he couldn't help but remember how something similar happened the last time Mashiro played out one of her strange schemes, which led to interesting results. Before he knew it, his legs had climbed up the stairs, and throughout the quiet household, he could hear the faint sounds of snoring. Looking down the hall and to the door of his room, he spared it a second glance before ultimately walking out the front door and looking up to see her waiting for him. He jumped on the rooftop with his superhuman strength. Startled, Mashiro spun her head around. You came. Didn't expect me? Her head shook, and he said neutrally, I had thoughts of turning in for the night. She frowns as he continues. But I'll be honest and say I want to see what you have planned. She smiles and eagerly pats the spot right next to her. Sit, sit, sit. He obeyed before looking at her, now expecting to hear her plan, but she looks up and he follows suit to the dark sky with a few stars twinkling in the distance. Do you like it? She asks after some time. Lily told me how Hueco Mundo has nothing in their skies besides the moon. So when I showed her the stars for the first time she was very excited. How about you, do you like them? Well, they're fascinating to look at. He said, now realizing that this was what she had planned. Not wanting to be rude and leave, he closed his eyes and listened off into the distance. He could hear the voices of humans who were out around this time, a few cars and the occasional dog's bark too. No sound of a hollow, and yet, he felt alarmed. Hearing the screams and roars of hollows in Hueco Mundo was such a normal occurrence that not hearing them now felt out of place. He opens his eyes again to look at her, trying to figure out how she'll surprise him. With her eyes glued to the stars, she pressed her knees to her chest. Lily said how seeing just this star was the most beautiful thing, but the lights in the human world hides all the stars that you could see at night. That's why I like Soul Society better, because you could really see how pretty they look. I promised Lily that one of these days I'm going to take her there so she could see them. She turned and smiled at him. I'll take you too, and I won't take no for an answer. If you insist. Her smile brightened, but then she got a strange look in her eyes. She opened her mouth, a bit hesitant to do so, but when she seemed to have found the courage, she said, What was your life like in Hueco Mundo? You've waited to ask me that, haven't you? He asked, and she stared blankly at him. My life was rather. He frowned as he openly began telling his life without being forced to. My life was different when compared to the other hollows. I was born in the deepest pits of Hueco Mundo, with no knowledge of a past life, and in that pit, I lived alone. Isolated because even I wasn't a normal hollow. So I left. Why? Would you stay in a place that made you feel like an outcast? He asked her back, getting a shake from her head. When I left, I traveled across Hueco Mundo alone, lamenting my existence. Feeling like an outcast, I found myself driven into social alienation. Then alone, I became more apathetic. I stopped caring for other beings, hollows, humans and Shinigami. With my life empty, I soon felt life was meaningless. What? A frown was back on her face. What made you feel life was meaningless? Looking deep into her eyes, he says, try to live a life like mine. Travel through a world where you live in an ocean of white sand and you're born to live as prey or predator. You aren't born with a free will since all you will do is eat. From the start to the end, all you will do is eat and only the strong will keep on living, but the more you become strong, the more you see that your life will become empty to you because in the end, you'll be standing alone. He looks up to the night sky and to the only stars shining through the eternal darkness. When you live long enough in Hueco Mundo, you will start seeing how emptiness occupies so much space. He looks at the living world's moon, like this world's moon, Hollow must go through phases of empty hunger to feel full again, and when you reach the end, you'll live in an illusion that's needed to disguise the emptiness within. Humans and Shinigami live through the same thing. They hunger to feel their emptiness fill up. So they create law and order, pursue dreams and ambitions to feed their empty world. He looks back at the woman, his words creating a strange look in her eyes. Was that pity or confusion he saw? He didn't know. The emotion didn't last long for him to decipher it since another emotion moved forward. I think. She looked deeply into his eyes. I think you're wrong in the way you're perceiving the world, including your own existence in it and how things actually are. You lived your life empty, but then something changed. What makes you think that? Because you're here. Stark said you follow him back here. You didn't need to, you could have kept living empty. So why did you follow him? When he didn't answer, she said, Ichigo told me how you broke your mask. Why would you do that? You could have died. Ichigo had told her that? No, Ichigo wouldn't tell her, she must have asked him. Because he told me how I could trust him, and I wanted to tell him that I did. There's more. Of course there is more, but he doesn't need to talk about it. I lived empty in my world. She's not forcing him to tell her. But Ichigo started becoming a part of it, then he started adding these other colorful individuals, and before I knew it, these eyes of dogs started seeing colors. So why is he telling her this? Each day since I got here, they have done anything to make me fit in. Even the Vizards tolerated my existence. And that. He moves a hand up to his chest and feels the beating of an organ against his chest. Started filling up the void in my chest with some emotion. Do you know what you're feeling? She said, smiling and laying her head on her knees. Should I know? She laughed softly and said, you're a really weird hollow, Okwabaka. Oh. You said how you were born in a deep pit, super dark pit, right? And then you live across Hueco Mundo, which is nothing but white sands, right? So you literally lived in a black and white world. Where are you going with this? When all is said and done, let's travel the human world together. Pardon me? Yeah. And no cheating, so no using garganta or sonido. I want you to see everything life offers. Let it be good or bad. Pumping a fist into the air in excitement, stars twinkle in her eyes. I actually never seen the world either. I spent the last 100 years hiding under a worn-out warehouse. You're a strange woman, Kuna-san. Mashiro, I want you to call me Mashiro. She smiled, and he reflected a ghost of a smile. You're strange, Mashiro. Silence, and then. Hey, since we're going to see the world, we should start with Karakura town first. So next week, instead of training, we'll go into town. Very well. More silence before yet again Mashiro opens her mouth. Hey, when you said you didn't care about other beings, you didn't mention Vizards or Arrancar. That's because I didn't know your or mine kind existed. Fair enough. But that doesn't mean that I wouldn't care about Vizards or Arrancar. Hey. Wanna spar again? Please go home and rest, Mashiro. He stood up and jumped down, ignoring her childish attempts to rile him up. Good night, Mashiro. I hope the bedbugs bite you, Okwabaka. Chapter 27, Counting Down the Days, Lily. Day 2. X. The clashing sound of blade and steel-skinned echoed in a steady rhythm across the quiet training ground. Ichigo takes a step forward and thrusts Hozukimaru, forcing Lily to sidestep his attacks before he takes a swing and attempts to cut her, but she reacts by punching the blade with her fist. He smirks as they create sparks between their collision. He then swings the other end of his naginata, aiming to hit the girl's head, but she blocks his advancement with her forearm. Thinking fast, he then rolls his elbow faster than the girl could follow and hits her from underneath her chin with his staff. Lily clenched her teeth and mustered enough strength to not startle a step back to give the Shinigami an opening. She saw him swing his spear forward, bringing the blade back around, and she crossed her arms. The blade tore the outfit, but that's all the damage done to her since a combination of Hiero and Ryatsu shielded her skin. Sparks once again ignited between blade and skin, causing a temporary blind spot for both fighters. With the small window provided, Lily grabbed both ends of the man's zanpakuto and pressed it against his chest horizontally. With flexibility gained by training, she returned the man's favor and kicked him under the chin, but just like her, he didn't startle back. Being physically stronger than Lily, Ichigo reclaimed his zanpakuto after a quick struggle against her. He jumped back and swung. When he expected the girl would block again with an arm, he cried out his surprise attack. Split apart. Lily watched as the spear changed into a 3-section staff, catching her off guard. At its normal length, she was going to block the blade, but now, as it extended with the 3 sections connected with a chain, she found her arm wrapped by it. Ichigo moves his left hand to grab his Sansetsuken in the middle and the other hand by the end. He pulls his staff, dragging the surprised Arrancar forward and swings the other end, but she recovers and leads her head back, evading the blunt end of the staff. Watching her dodge, he keeps pulling her forward and lands a knee strike to her stomach that knocks the air out of her lungs. As the Arrancar got briefly stunned, he flicks his wrist and unchains her arm before grabbing back the end of his staff. The weapon reconnected again to return to its spear form, and he thrust forward again. This time his attacks landed and cut her right side, but while slightly stunned, Lily moves just the slightest to avoid any serious damage. Once focused again, she watched him swing his zanpakuto by grabbing the end of the staff with one hand. Is he that predictable? Only one way to find out. She blocks again by crossing her arms in front of her, but then she sees the smirk on the Shinigami's lips and she figures he thinks he caught her in a trap. She saw the man's zanpakuto once again change its form without a command. Can they all do that? While she blocked the midsection of the staff, the other end had come back around and cut her back. Hissing at the shallow cut, Lily grabs a hold of the staff and pulls, returning the man's act, but the only difference was how she was running towards him with her opposite arm extended and straightened out. Gathering Ryatsu around her arm, Ichigo's chest met Lily's light green cover arm. Lazo Lariat. Besides feeling the force of the girl's momentum against his chest, the bald Shinigami also felt once again the unbearable heat. Thankfully, he didn't have to tolerate it for long since Lily had let go of Hozukimaru and he went skidding across the floor before standing back up again. He checked his chest, trying to see if it burned his clothes off, but they were fine and his chest didn't have any burn marks. He looks up just in time to see the kick aimed towards his side and lifts Hozukimaru, but the girl had kicked harder than he was expecting and her attack knocked away his zanpakuto. Now left weaponless but not defenseless, he rushes back at the Arrancar with his fist. Lily thought the Shinigami would scatter to retrieve his weapon and not rush towards her barehanded. While somewhat shocking, Lily rushed too. She raised an open palm to guide away the swing that Ichigo had thrown. Although his attempt got maneuvered away, Ichigo didn't stop. He steps into the girl's personal space by putting his right foot closer to her and throws a quick jab to hit her sides, but the girl takes a quick pivot step forward before guiding his fist away from her again with her left arm and throws a right jab on his chest. He wordlessly said a quick curse before grabbing the girl's right hand to pull and slam his head with hers. He then lets go of her, and as she stumbles a step back, he delivers and lands a nasty left hook on her side before taking a swing with his right that lands right on her cheek. Right after that last punch, Lily noticed how Ichigo was going to still carry out his assault by throwing another left hook. Not letting the Shinigami get an upper hand over her, she spun around with her rear foot before lifting her right leg and hitting the back of Ichigo's left forearm. The kick was a good enough parry that lasted 2 seconds, in which she took the small time to gather Ryatsu on her right leg before kicking off from the ground with the other foot. Ichigo thought of closing the distance before the girl could pull off some stunt, but she was already ahead of him in both distance and action. She swung her Ryatsu-covered leg and called out her attack. Ciro Crescente Crescent Ciro. Lily kicks a familiar-looking curved sickle-shaped Ciro at the Shinigami, but unlike Mashiro's Super Ciro, it doesn't follow the arc-shaped path made by her foot. Instead, it fires off as a crescent-shaped Ciro. If there was one thing that Ichigo knew about Hollow Ciro was that the energy attack came with their usual explosive kick. He shunpa to a safe distance and turned around to see that an explosion didn't go off, and instead it had created a foot-deep trench on the ground. Sheesh, that would have dismembered any part of his body. Which reminds him, this simple spar could have been an excuse for the Arrancar to accidentally kill him. Was she keeping her promise to his captain? Confused, he looked back to ask her when suddenly she invaded his personal space. Oh, that's right. This was a spar. He attempted to take a step back, but then he felt something pressed behind his leg and looked down to see that the girl had her left foot behind his. Lost at the odd strategy, he looks back at Lily to see that her entire form has changed. Her stance was more narrow because of how close she invaded his proximity, and with her legs set behind his, she was really close, so he couldn't try freeing himself. The girl's arms were both set differently. Her left arm was up to her shoulder with her elbow bent towards her chest with an open palm pose, while her right arm was down to her hip and bent to her stomach with the same pose. He narrows his eyes as he tries to drag his left leg back, but the girl is keeping him at bay with her leg. He takes a swing with his right, and at such close quarters, his punch will reach her faster. Or so he thought, because the open palm that was close to her chest moved over to guide his punch to the side, and that's when she moved the leg that was behind his. She pulls the leg back, and he loses his center of gravity. Imagine embarrassingly tripping in front of the entire 11th Division. Ichigo was seconds away from having that entire self-consciousness sitting on the back of his mind for the rest of his afterlife if it wasn't for the knee kick he received from Lily, which knocked him back to his feet. He pressed down on his legs so he wouldn't trip over and look back to Lily, only to find her closer to his face, like really close. He could see the colors of her eye better. If it wasn't for the palm strike he felt on his stomach, he would have waved off her proximity to an awkward tripping over scenario during a practice match, but that wasn't the case. The girl just enjoys invading personal space. Just like last time, he felt Lily's foot behind his and figured she was trying to trip him again. Shame on me if I fell for the same trick twice. He recovers from the hit and tries to shift his footing to a more comfortable stance, but can't as the girl changes her footing to follow his. He tisked and stands his ground and swings a right hook, but it never connects as the girl reacts faster and only reflects his attack away from her. Another click of his tongue and Ichigo throws a left uppercut, but again another reflection. Why, you little. Right jab, left hook, a short right straight punch, a right uppercut, and then a left overhand. But no matter how quickly and sharp he's throwing his punches or feinting them before swinging with his other hand, Lily kept guiding them away and returning some quick hits on him. He hasn't made her move an inch either. Feeling a bit irritated, Ichigo feigns a left jab before throwing a right elbow, but an open palm stops that advancement too. He thought of throwing another overhand before he felt a change in his stance and looked down to see that Lily had moved his leg closer to the other, which made him narrow his stance. Ignoring it, he swings left, and she catches his hand with no effort with her right hand before snaking her left leg behind his. He noticed, but couldn't do anything as she moved faster. She pulled her legs, tripping him back and rears her other arm back. Seeing her arm coming down at him, Ichigo kicks off with his right leg and gets another hit on the Arrancar's chin. Since the kick came as a surprise, she had loosened her grasp on him. He pulls his arm and untangles his leg. Without a second to lose, he runs over and grabs Hosokumaru. He raises his Zanpakuto to block Lily's fist. I thought I had a chance in a fistfight, but after that brief exchange, I knew that if I keep fighting against you on your own turf, then I will lose. You thought you could beat me in a fistfight? Lily smirks. Sorry to tell you this, but a certain Nico-sensei trained me like hell for the last 2 years. So I'm better than the average Shinigami who fights with their Zanpakuto all the time and doesn't do much hand-to-hand training. Before I was a Shinigami, I used to be another punk looking for a fight, but everyone I fought didn't know how to use a sword, so I used my fist. The bald Shinigami admitted, but I'd be lying to say they were better than you. Feeling her pushing harder against him, Ichigo relaxes his muscles and steps to the side. He then stuck out Hosokumaru and watched the lime-haired girl tripped forward. Following along with the opening he made, he swung up Hosokumaru and really hit her stomach. Hit harder than what she expected had left her momentarily dazed, which the Shinigami took full advantage of. He started cutting across her body, but when she found her bearings again, she glared and prepared to catch his weapon to deliver another lazo before another idea lit up. It's slightly risky and she will fail miserably if not done right, so she needs to create an opening and hit him with something he's not expecting, but to do that, he needs to use his 3-section staff. There's a small opening, and by small she means around a second or two, when the man's shurikai takes time to change between staff and spear. Even if it's for a moment, that's all the opportunity she's going to need. Let's see if your training helps, Yoruchi. Jumping back to avoid his thrust, Lily kept her distance to irritate the bald Shinigami. You need to be calm when fighting, got it? A hot head makes poor decisions. That was a lesson that Yoruchi had beaten into her head since she was a rather short-fuse individual. Let's see how long it'll take to piss him off. She didn't have to wait for long, the Shinigami had shorter patience than her. Stop running around the place. Ichigo yelled as the girl dodged. You were so full of bravado and talk, but now you're running around. Not my fault that you can't hit an easy target. Lily stuck her tongue out childishly, ticking him off even more. But if you want to hit a harder target to feel proud of yourself, then, she smirked before she started running circles around him with Sonido. This should make you feel better, right? Ichigo spun around in his spot, looking at 3 after-imagines running circles around him. Why you little? He grabs the end of Hosokumaru before splitting and swinging it around. As his weapon phased through 2 of the illusions, he prepares himself to recall back his Zanpakuto and block the sneak attack that would most likely come from above, but just when he was about to recall back his shurikai, the third Lily had grabbed his staff. She was hiding among them. This part of the plan has gone well, but now comes the harder part. Not only does she have to close the gap between them in less than a couple of seconds, which won't be impossible for her, but she has to predict the next move from Ichigo right. Your instincts in battle are sharp. She tried throwing the weapon before closing the distance between them faster than his shurikai could revert. That's why you'll make some obvious moves. He held on to Hosokumaru when the Arrancar tried to pull and toss the weapon away from him, but all that did was extend the chains of his staff. So all he has to do is flick his wrist to whip the back of the Arrancar's back, but then she pulls her stunt. She closed the distance faster than he could react, and she was too close to recall his shurikai, so the only 2 moves left was to either block or move, and he couldn't quite lean on the latter for a choice since she was too close to him. A sloppy dodge could cause him his life in real battle. Lily knew he wouldn't try to attack her and he couldn't risk dodging at such close quarters either. So instead, not letting go of Hosokumaru, he raises his arms to block, but that's what she was hoping for. A kick or a punch was the next move he saw coming. What he didn't see coming was the jump to perform a perfect split to stop his arms from guarding him and, in the same motion, the girl pointed two finger guns aiming down at him. She doesn't have her Zanpakuto, but that doesn't mean she can't use any other means to do the job. His eyes widened when he saw Ryatsu gather around 3 areas, one on both fingers and another one over her mask. These weren't Shiro. Bala. But at close quarters, 3 ballas hit just as hard. Her attack shot the Shinigami back and engulfed him in a screenshot of dirt. She landed on her feet and waited for the surrounding smoke to clear. She didn't hit him hard enough to be lethal, but she put more kick on her attacks to at least injure him. That wasn't a Shiro but what was it again? Bala? Ichigo walked out of the smoke with a shredded shirt before ripping and tossing it away, revealing the burn marks across his chest. They hurt like hell, but they didn't kill me. Not trying to kill you, dumbass, I'm trying to knock you out. Lily frowns before adding, although I hit you with enough juice to hurt you. Then you should start doing a better job. He inspected the wounds on her sides, then the stomach before checking her limbs. She had blocked most of his attacks with her arms. She even caught his blade a few times, but nothing but sparks seemed to come out of their clash. If he has to guess, it probably has to do with the light surrounding her limbs that acts as some form of protected layer. Lily checks the burn marks on his chest a little closer. If I try, then I would most likely kill you. Remembering a particular piece of information. From Yoruchi, she seemed to have figured out the man's trick. A Shinigami doesn't have Hiero, but you can do something close to it. You used your own Ryatsu to harden your skin. She looks at the seal on her arm. If you focus all 30% of your Ryatsu on your chest before I hit you, then that's the only way I can see you still standing. You think I'm the kind to have that kind of control over my Ryatsu? Your bala hit me faster than I could even try to shield myself. He gestures at her with his head. What about you? Can't you control protecting your stomach area? If you're referring to our Hiero, then sadly, that's not how it works. We use our Ryoryoku, not our Ryatsu, and sadly it's not absolute that we can block every attack. Ichigo frowns. Then how about your arms and legs? You have been able to stop my blade with ease and I haven't seen a single scratch on them. She smirks and raises a hand up. Why do you think that is? I'm not a know-it-all, but it's Ryatsu, isn't it? When her smirk rises higher, he narrows his eyes. But you said. I never said that we couldn't use our Ryatsu in any way or form. He nodded. That sounds logical. There's some kind of heat coming off your arms and legs, I feel it every time you physically touch me. His frown deepens. You have an element, don't you? Let me ask you a question first. Why haven't you bothered to use Kido? Ichigo laughed before clearing an invisible tear. As a member of the 11th Division, we don't regulate in using Kido. Besides, my mom didn't make me a do-it-all kind of guy at birth, so in Ryatsu control, I'm on the same level as a beginner. Then what about your Bankai? Sorry, no Bankai. Again, he gestures at her. What about you? Where's your Resurrection? Well, she looks at her rapier that was on the ground over the Shinigami's shoulders. I don't have any good relationship with my Zanpakuto to do that. If he wasn't lying about not being able to use Bankai, he would have laughed at the fact that they appeared to be 2 peas in a pod. Well, at least in the sense that they couldn't use their ultimate move. However, the fact remains that Lily has more up her sleeves. Sonido, Hiero, Bala, and, although she hasn't shown him, without a doubt in mind, Shiro has been the showcase, but he hasn't seen everything in the girl's arsenal. Compared to him, she had better cards in her hand and he's refusing to use his Bankai with so many people here. No knowledge to use the art of Kido. No real mastery over Shuunpa. The only thing he has going on for himself is the fact that he knew how to swing his Zanpakuto. His mind wanders back to her coated limbs. So are you going to tell me about your Ryatsu trick or not? If there was a word that could best describe Lily's expression right now, it would be incredulous. You're actually expecting me to tell you? You really think I would tell you, my enemy, the secrets to my techniques? When Ichigo said nothing but shrugged while still waiting for an answer, she hopped a few times in her spot before rushing towards him. Yukitake watched Lily fight off an armed Ichigo with skills in hand-to-hand combat that seemed to rival those of the 2nd Division's members. She was possibly better than your average lieutenant at hand-to-hand combat, but he wasn't the expert people would listen to. He, just like the other 2 captains, looked at the 2nd Division captain. It was hard to get a read on her since her facial expression seems to be carved from the toughest sekiseki, but her eyes lively dance around as she follows the girl's movements. Lieutenant. Suifeng could feel their eyes on her as they waited for not some half-ass opinion, but for a proper statement. She isn't giving Madarame-san any time to recover or to even think thoroughly since she's making sure to always be on the move. She hasn't stopped no longer than 5 seconds to think of a plan since the match had really started. I'm sure she's already playing them on her head. Even when Madarame-san had landed blows on her, she's still been on her toes and continue on. She watched Lily raise her left arm to block the 11th Division soldier's thrust before grabbing the man's blade with her hand with no visible hesitation before delivering a 2-kick combo with her right leg on Ichigo's wielding forearm and hand. Ichigo couldn't resist yelping before dropping his zanpakuto. No guess why, she had seen how hard those kicks could feel. She also knows how to disarm her opponent, but what really sets her as a lieutenant is her unique orthodox stance. The Arrancar girl steps on the man's zanpakuto before placing her right foot farther in between Ichigo's feet. Usually in an orthodox stance, you put your weaker side closer to the opponent and you don't set yourself so close to your opponents either, but the Arrancar had made it work by mixing in different fighting techniques, and on a side note, from what I can see, these techniques aren't something you learn in the Shinigami Academy but most likely in the world of living. The most simple thing to break down is her arms posture. The Arrancar has her arms and hands set to hover close to her chest and waist area. At first glance, you would think she would use her open palms for quick palm strikes only, but she's using them to redirect Madarame-san's punches while landing light blows too. She narrows her eyes when Lily seems to murmur something to herself. The way her mouth moved, did she say 12? Yukitake looked at an example of Suifeng's explanation when Lily, at close quarters, guided Ichigo's fist away from her before landing a hit on his chest. I can see how she moves her palm inside the punch and places it on his wrist, and I'm sure Ichigo-san has too, but why hasn't he done something about it? Madarame-san, and like the other barbaric fools of the 11th Division, are more brawn than brain. He probably thinks if he hits harder, faster and stronger, then that would do the trick, but it doesn't matter because the Arrancar will just keep doing what she's doing and won't get a hit on her because the battle will stay stale and be in her favor. Shunsui wanted a bit more clarity and, peculiarly enough, the one who answered was Unohana. It's rather easy to understand and simple to explain, Captain Kairaku. Madarame-san knows how much force needs to be put behind his swings to know how fast and how hard he'll hit her, but our dear Arrancar knows how to disrupt that force by placing her palm inside of the punch to touch his wrist and guide the fist away with a bit of her own force. Yukitake frowns. Ichigo-san is no novice. Among lieutenants and seated officers, he's the best in Zanjutsu and Hakuda. He shouldn't be struggling this hard against her. I'm sure he keeps his skills sharp and never dull. True, but what does Madarame-san fight? Suifeng asked. I don't understand the question. What are Madarame-san's usual opponents? Shinigami and Hollows. Shunsui answered. And how many times has he fought an Arrancar? That got both men to zip their lips before she said. I can't say how well the rest of the Arrancar may fight when weaponless, but if they're anything like her, then it's a good thing this spar is happening for us to observe, because it looks like someone taught them a little too well. Yukitake didn't miss the tone when saying, someone, because he knew who she was talking about, and it made sense to watch Lily's fight more carefully because if that someone trained her, then that someone must have trained the rest of the Arrancar. As he looked at the petite woman's face, maybe it'll do good for Captain Suifeng to talk about something else. he can see how just thinking of her was driving the 2nd Division captain to a mellow tunnel. Captain Sui Feng, about Lilynette's stance. She knew he asked as a distraction, and truthfully, she was thankful to Yucatec for it. The last thing to talk about is the only thing we compliment, her footing. It's rather something I have never seen. She places one of her feet behind a leg to lock him in place and to control his stance. The technique either originated in the world of living and she adapted it, or someone taught her how to deal with our ho-ho. That alone would place her at 2nd seat. Shihoin Yoruchi was captain of the 2nd Division because she was a Hakuda and Shuinpa master. She crossed her arms before continuing. Once mastered, she carried around her Zanpakudo but never used it because she was that confident in her skills. While Sui Feng didn't want to think about her, it only makes sense that she would teach someone every way to counter a Shuinpa user. While Ho-Ho and Shuinpa are different techniques, footwork is the foundation for both skills, and the Arrancar's fighting style seems to have developed to counter just that. From what she has seen so far, when fighting an armed opponent she would use kickboxing to land sharp and heavy kicks, and when she disarms, she uses a modern style of bagwazang that mixes with an orthodox stance, and that's where the girl's skills glow. From an outsider's point of view, Lilynette places herself into Ikiku's personal circle to have closer hand-to-hand combat and would probably have ignored how she put a foot behind him, but when she noticed the little tripping accident, she knew there was more. If Ichigo hadn't tripped, she would have missed it, but thankfully it had happened, and she has been seeing how the Arrancar uses that foot to place and push the man's feet closer to narrow or spread his stance. A narrow stance means more power on kicks but less power behind a swing, and while quick jabs can get thrown, Lily knows how to defend herself against those. A spread stance means kicks will be difficult to execute because of the large weight shift, so the only thing left would be hand-to-hand combat, which is something the 11th Division man is good at, but Lily's better at countering. Just the way she can change and control her opponent's stance made her realize that any other opponent against the girl wouldn't have lasted long if she got to disarm them. She also can't help but wonder if the girl would do any good against her. Maybe she would be a decent warm-up, seeing how she is the one who taught her. Her heart aches just thinking about it. Yoruchi found someone else to train. She always felt somewhat special when Yoruchi used to take a moment of her time to help her train. She felt so joyful back then because it made her feel like her captain enjoyed training her, but then that day happened and she couldn't help but to think that Yoruchi only tolerated her to keep up the fake persona. Hearing a grunt from the bald man, Sui Feng looks back in time to see Ichigo fly back from a side kick that lands him back to his Zanpakudo, which he grabs instantly and charges at the Arrancar. At least he can take a beating. Just when she was focusing back on the match, her eyes found a pair of individuals near the 2nd seats that shouldn't be here. What are a couple of students doing here? Shino bit the inside of her cheek. It was unmistakable to her and everyone else that her big brother was losing. Hell, her brother's division stopped cheering. She could see all the cuts across the Arrancar's sides, but her arms and legs still look fine. Her brother has cut the clothes but not cut the steel-like skin. How is that possible? This fight should have been an easy victory to him. Who was this girl again? Lieutenant to the boogeyman of Shinigami, Zangetsu, and the daughter of the king of Hueco Mundo are what she said too, right? Damn it, Ichigo, this was bad luck. You bit off more than you could chew on. What her mind still couldn't wrap around was the reality that her brother was losing. Her brother couldn't lose, he was the strongest Shinigami she knew. Even though that arrogant side of him annoyed her, he had a reason to feel that way. She remembers spying on one of his spar with the lieutenant of the 6th Division and winning against him so effortlessly. Ichigo isn't even the lieutenant of his division, but he bested someone who was. He was a master at Zanjutsu and just as good at Hakuda. Watching as her brother narrowly avoids a kick to the liver, Shino clenches her hands and shoves the Shinigami that had moved in front of her before walking into the field. What the hell are you doing, Ichigo? Kick her ass already. Hearing his sister call him out, he stops to see her burst from the line of lieutenants. Shino. What the hell are you doing? A direct kick to the liver sent him rolling across the field before stopping and gasping for air. Ichigo. Just when she was about to run to her brother's side, she felt someone place a hand on her shoulders. Shino. Yumachika turns the girl around. What are you doing here? You should be at the academy. I know, but this idiot couldn't keep his mouth shut during dinner yesterday since he kept talking about how he was going to fight an Arrancar and I was too curious. You can't blame me for it, I just wanted to see what they look like. She answered back to her brother's friend and darted her eyes to see him trying to stand up. Yumachika's purple-colored eyes follow the girl's sight. Come on, this is your brother's fight. He pulls her, but when the girl doesn't budge, he looks back at her and she looks back at him. The look in her eyes was very obvious to him. Your brother is going to be fine. When Yumachika takes his hand back and waits for her to walk, she turns around and screams at her brother one more time, I'll be cheering for you, so you better win this. Shit. This hurts like hell. There was a reason he was covering his right side the best he could. He was sure that Lily had been avoiding hitting that spot. There were plenty of openings in which she had slipped through his defenses and a few times he wouldn't have been able to block, but she never took them. Finally pulling out shots under the belt. He grimaces slightly at the pain that ran across his body. That was a rather dirty hit that I didn't expect from you. Lily knew that, she didn't need anyone to tell her that a liver shot can cause some serious damage, but she needs to end this fight. This has taken too long, and she's enjoying it. This doesn't feel like those simple spars that she partakes with Mashiro or Yoruchi. Those two basically use sparring matches to teach her new fighting methods. This also doesn't feel like her regular training routines she does to help Minoli or Loli. Her opponent also wasn't some Lotira Juchas. This man is one of their actual enemies. She was also finally fighting someone who didn't see some weak little girl. He was fighting her with the respect of a warrior. Which is why she's enjoying this fight, because she's actually fighting someone at an equal footing. Well, technically, the seals placed on them are what put them on equal grounds, but that's what had made this fight so enjoyable. Breathe and calm down. No reason to feel so high because of some fight. She told herself in a way to relax, but her inner hollow started saying otherwise. What the hell is wrong with that? What's wrong with it? She took another quick breather before rushing back to the Shinigami without answering his question. I'm not one of Barragan's barbaric hollows that only wants to fight. She balances her body to the right as Ichigo makes a haste attempt to stab her and locks his spear under her arm before delivering another devastating kick to the liver. Again, I ask, what's wrong with that? Seeing Ichigo stunned, she throws a cross punch that lands on his chest, 18, and sends him rolling back. I'm not some hollow that finds pleasure in fighting. I'm better than. Her inner self cut in sharply. Better than what? Hollows? Now you're feeling like you're better than them when you were trying to show them that everyone should get treated the same, even if they're hollow and you're an Arrancar. No. Damn it. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm supposed to be better. I'm supposed to show them we don't need to act like animals when we have the chance to feel human again even if we don't look like it. She silently prays that Ichigo could stay down but the guy gets up again. Kami. Do I need to break bones for you to stop fighting? He laughed before answering, remember what we bet on. Give me a hell of a good time, Lillinette. He rushed towards her with his spear held high. Damn it. She didn't bother running towards him and appeared in front of him with a sonido. She twisted her body to move her rear foot at front to swing at his head level, but Ichigo acted fast and swung Hozukamara down low to trip her, which caused her to fall backwards. Seeing an opening, he brings Hozukamara back around and slams Lily on her liver, returning the favor for those cheap shots. Instead of expecting her to lose some drive after that hit, the look in her eye seemed to tell otherwise since it appeared like she got a jumpstart instead. Even after getting hit by the spear and still falling backward, she found enough strength to twist her body and deliver a kick on the Shinigami's head. She hears his body rolling a few times as she flops with her back to the ground. I'm supposed to show everyone that we don't have to keep living like hollows, fighting and killing are our fundamental traits, but we do that without reason. If I can show them how I can fight for a good cause, then they should be able to follow my example. This fight isn't for any cause. It's just to fulfill someone's wet dream. I don't need to waste my time with this stupid fight. Panting hard, she looked over at Ichigo standing up again and couldn't stop herself from following his example. You think we don't have reasons for doing what we do? She asked back, but Lily didn't answer. That doesn't mean she's going to give up, not when Lily is getting close. You don't want to keep fighting? Of course I don't. She said while dodging the separated Hosokumaru before grabbing and pulling it to deliver a lazo across the bald man's chest, but he was only down for a couple of seconds before running back to her. Then why do you keep fighting? Is it to find some self-worth in yourself? I remember how everyone made you feel weak. She watched Lily cross her arms over her head to block the spear, but left herself open to a knee strike on her stomach. Is it the pleasure of a good fight? I know how you've been feeling this whole time, you never felt this excited before. Even after the hit, Lily hasn't budged her arms. Or is it because of pride? I mean, claiming to be the daughter of the king of Hueco Mundo and lieutenant to the infamous Zangetsu means you have to carry yourself in the same manner of pride as them, right? Lily grabbed a hold of Ichigo's weapon and fired a bala over her eye that hit him. She didn't rush after him and stopped to let Ichigo have time to catch his breath. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me how you really feel. Not self-worth, pleasure, or pride. Tell me how you feel. She stares at Ichigo laughing before standing up and telling her something that seems to fly over her head. He rushed towards her and met her up close for a close-quarter battle. She ducks under a swing that is at her head level. I feel so normal. Fights with Mashiro or Yoruchi don't feel like this. With the way I'm fighting right now, with the way my body moves on its own, I feel like this is all natural for me. With one hand, Lily blocks a knee strike Ichigo was trying to pull off, and with the other one, she stops Hosokumaru. She acted a little too late when the Shinigami pulled his head back before slamming it on her face. She stopped holding the knee and tried to check herself, but that's when her opponent used the opportunity to deliver a punch across her cheek that threw her back. She lay on the ground exhausted but not beaten, and seconds later stood back on her feet. Why can't I stay down? Why do I want to keep going? She quietly asks her inner self as she goes back into fighting Ichigo. You can call that a drive or pulse, it has another fancy name, too. The inner Lily quietly spoke back. This makes you a hollow. What makes everyone feel like a hollow? The fighting? That's what it means to be a hollow. I guess you don't understand it. You said it yourself before, back when you split apart from Stark, that you had been taking it for granted in the way you have never gone through the life of a hollow, and this is the life of a hollow, fighting to survive or to feel pleasure. We have literally divided Hueco Mundo into this because we follow these simple pulses that give us drive. The inner hollow smiled broadly. To you, I represent these pulses that you need to accept, Lilynette. Lily skips back to escape a swipe and hisses as she could feel another addition to the cuts on her stomach. Luckily it wasn't something too deep, and it was an inch away from her. Hollow hole. I get it now. She smiles while relaxing her mind to coat her arms and legs with an extra layer of her Ryatsu. Do you? It was a little hard, but, like you said, I didn't go living like a normal hollow, so I didn't get to know what it was to follow it. And because of that, I don't know the struggles that hollows go through. I shouldn't try to hide or take away their instincts. Low chuckles bubble up from inner Lily's throat before she laughs out loud. For 2 years you have ignored me, but now that you can finally feel it, think you can accept me so easily? The corners of Lily's smile drop to a small frown. We're hollows, listening to our instincts should come naturally to us. She goes back to smiling again. You're a part of me I should have listened to from the moment I heard you, which reminds me, I want to have a chat with you. Fine. The inner hollow grins, but first, you gotta take out the cue ball. What are you smiling about, Lily? Ichigo asked with his own grin on his face. Her smile turned into a smirk. Honestly? I'm smiling because I'm actually enjoying myself right now. At her answer, he bursts out laughing before asking, finally understood what I meant. Yeah, I did. So then, he moves into a stance, for how long do you want to enjoy this? Sorry, but I'm going to be ending this soon. Ichigo took it as a challenge. I want to see you try. Do you know what you're going to do? I have a crazy idea. Lily looked past Ichigo's shoulder to see her rapier a few meters behind him. No matter how many times she has kicked him, he seems to always land near her sword. I don't know if it'll work, because by logic, it shouldn't be possible. But I don't feel so dispirited about trying it. Do you remember what Urahara-san told you before? About Zanpakuto? I do. She rushed towards Ichigo before taking a leap and slamming her foot down at the spot the Shinigami was standing just seconds before he took a jump back. A Zanpakuto isn't just a weapon, or an extension for yourself. A Zanpakuto is a part of you, a part of your soul. Seeing him closer to her rapier, and feeling much spiritually closer to her Zanpakuto, she focuses on gathering her Ryuryoku. However, an Arrancar's Zanpakuto is far different than a Shinigami. That's why I feel that my idea would work. The more Ryuryoku she focused on, the more she could feel it gather in her rapier. An Arrancar's Zanpakuto are a part of our essence and soul. After launching another axe kick that lured Ichigo closer to her Zanpakuto, she called out her trap card, Punta. The girl wasn't holding her Zanpakuto, he could clearly see that, but why would she call out that attack? It's not like her Zanpakuto could launch her attack. Unless it can. Just as he finished the thought, he felt the familiar burning sensation that ran through the shoulder he was holding his weapon. Ichigo turns his head to see that the girl's attack has not come from the point of the blade but had come from a spot that was close to the weapon's guard that a beam of light shot to his shoulder. Shit. I didn't expect something like this from her. He turns back around to see that Lily's right leg was coming down from an axe kick he wasn't paying attention to. Just before her leg hit his shoulder, Lily had created an espinas at the back of her ankle, and when she felt that her leg pinned to his shoulder, she used every muscle in her right leg to hoist herself off the ground before swinging her other leg to hit Ichigo on the side of the head. She dispelled espinas and punta at the same time she landed her kick to see him fly off across and land near the ground of second-seated officers. Is he down for the count? No, she answered way before Ichigo started moving because she already knew the type of person he is. Is not worth it. What the hell are you talking about? Ichigo asked as he pushed himself to his feet. This is going to be the best fight I will ever have. You make it sound like we will not fight again. He chuckles before lifting his head. You're going to die, remember? Grumbling from both puncture wounds on his shoulders, he switched his spear to his other hand. Maybe, or maybe not. She can't help but smile a little because something was telling her how he was already on his way here. We have to wait and see. His eyes still held a glint in them that appears she couldn't quite understand. Whatever it could be, it's the reason he hasn't dropped his weapon. You don't need to keep fighting. Just swallow your pride and we can fight another day. Pride? He laughed before correcting her, I'm not fighting for any pride or honor, I'm just being selfish and wanting a good time. He took a lot of beatings to the head and liver. How can he still keep going? The inner Lily asked right as Ichigo took a stance. Maybe an espinas to the chest will stop him. Before she could try any more violence, she says, 22. Which seemed to be enough to stop the Shinigami in confusion. 22. 22 what? 22 different times I could have killed you. She told him in a hard, clipped tone. So that's what she has been counting. But Sui Feng knew that it wasn't just any hit that Lily landed, she knew that because she has seen Lily land over 22 different hits. She has been counting lethal blows then, anything that meant one hit kill. However, it all sounded like bullshit. Ichigo screamed out in rage. 22 different times he could have died. That's absurd. Then a demonstration. She stated back coolly, which only seemed to enrage the man, before taking her stance. Ichigo rushed towards her, his mind already checking in the boxes of the many ways Lily could attack. Her rapier wasn't close or near enough to surprise him from a sneak attack to the back. Her stance right now was the one she uses to redirect his punches and trip him, and as long as he didn't get into her zone, then there's no way she can trap him. With Ballas and, most likely, Zeros, he can easily dodge with a well-timed flash step. Her hierro seems to cover just her arms and legs. It wasn't even that tough, so if he could, then maybe sneaking a slash across her chest could give him the win. I just need to act faster than her. Once he reached a safe distance that was close and far away from her, he swung and split apart Hosokumaru. 23. The light the shot from both of Lily's palms wasn't what Ichigo expected, they even moved faster than he could have reacted. One of the girl's attacks had gone through his left forearm, the one he was holding Hosokumaru, and the other light hit. He looks down to his chest. He could sense the heat from the light, but thankfully, it didn't pierce him. Shit. He looked back up. You could have always done this, huh? Lily kept her espinas up as she explained, espinas, just another one of my tricks. All I have to do is focus on the ryatsu that I have over my arms and legs. Every hit to the head, liver, chest and stomach could have been all lethal blows. Her eye narrows down. This match is over. You can't use your arms anymore. Then I'll just hold Hosokumaru with my teeth. Ichigo responded. And if I break your teeth? Then I'll just kick you. And if I break your legs? That closed the man's mouth. We can fight another day, Ichigo. This won't be our last. She dispersed her espinas and started walking towards Captain Zaraki. But it could be if we keep going and you don't go over and recover. She looked over her shoulder to see the bald Shinigami bending down to grab his Zanpakuto. She stopped to watch him just in case he tried to pull a quick one on her, but he held his spear over his left shoulder. Doesn't he have a hole in his forearm? I'm sure he's trying to tough it out. You didn't win, so the promise doesn't hold up. She turned around and walked back to Captain Zaraki while hiding her smirk from him. We never bet on winning or losing, only if I give you a good fight. So it's up to you if the bet holds up. She heard Ichigo laugh just as she stood in front of the captain of the 11th Division, his imposing figure towering over her, but she didn't feel terrified. She raised both her arms and pressed them together. Welp, I'm ready to go back to my hole again. Kenpachi's impassive expression manner soon changed into hysterical laughter. Did he not see one of his men getting beat up? She raised her arms a little higher and shook them. Hello, Captain Zaraki, the prisoner's supposed to go back to her cell, remember? The giant of a man's laughter slowly came to a halt. You sure you want to return there? His signature smirk came forth and said, I can give you a few more minutes to mess around. Huh? Lily looked in the direction Kenpachi was staring at and recognized the group of Shinigami that are around Ichigo as Hanataro tended to his wound were all lieutenants. It was easy to see the white badge on their arms. She looked back at the captain. Your guy gave me a hard time, and I'm already beat up. I don't think I want to take my chance with a lieutenant right now. He shrugged his shoulders and waved at the guards that brought Lily here. Fine. He smirked and said, then next time. She smirked back, yeah, next time. Shino was having a hard time keeping up a scowl on her face as her lips quiver a bit. You almost died, dumbass. Ichigo seemed insulted by what he heard. Who are you calling a dumbass, brat? At the wrong thing. You. Almost. Died. Yeah. Well, ouch. Don't tighten the bandage too hard. He glared at the 4th Division member, who quickly backed away and bowed his head up and down repetitively. I'm sorry about that, Madarame-san. Hanataro looked up and said, I did what I could, but you will need to come to the 4th Division so that the captain can heal and keep you there to recover better. Ha! I don't need to be bedridden. Oh. Are you sure about that, Madarame-san? Everyone's spine shivered at the little too sweet tone in Captain Anohana's voice. The group of lieutenants moved away as she got closer to Ichigo. She put her hand over his punctured shoulder and gave it a light squeeze, making the man groan in pain. I think you need to come with me if a gentle touch like that made you wince, Madarame-san. The sweet smile she gave him said that there was no room for arguments. I suppose if you say so, Captain Unohana. After they slammed the door to her cell, she looked back and stared at the door for a few seconds before dropping to the ground. Shit. I'm exhausted. Are you really? Yes. No. I don't know. My heart is beating hard but my body feels so light. And the smile on your face? The inner hollow asked with a teasing tone in her voice. She's right, she could feel herself smiling. Guess I'm still excited. Her smile dropped. Can we talk? We can talk tomorrow, okay? Promise? Yeah, I promise. Day 3. She didn't find the time to talk to her inner hollow. Correction. She watches Captain Suifeng do another lap around her. I couldn't even try. Her body, and she's sure of her appearance, must look like shit. Soon as light shone through the window of her cell, Captain Suifeng grabbed her and she got taken back to the room of the first day, only that this time the petite captain was alone and she hadn't laid a finger on her for the past hour. Yet. Lily watched Captain Suifeng stop after making another lap around her and leaned close before cupping her chin with a hand. The unexpected action made her jerk her head back, but the woman kept an iron grip and didn't let go. She wanted to tell her off, but stopped upon seeing the mixed pool of desperation and frustration in the captain's eyes. She stared back too, wondering if Suifeng was staring into a deeper part of her soul that she has never seen before. A tender shiver ran down her back as those gray orbs seemed to take her body apart and try to find something much deeper than just the thousands of souls that dwell inside of her. Lily wanted to know what was going on inside the woman's head. Suifeng felt the knot in her stomach get worse, so much worse. She doesn't know how or when it happened, but sometime last night she was wrestling with restless sleep. She tossed and turned to find a comfortable position, but her legs kept shaking and she felt like running. So she did just that. She got up and went for a quick run to burn off the unnecessary energy she's filled with, but wanted to do more than just run around. So she started training for hours before realizing that sleepless nights only happen when she's thinking of her, and having her invade her mind again after all these years again makes her feel frustrated. She's not some obsessed little girl anymore. She's the captain of the division that she left behind for a bunch of beasts. Beasts that look just like this girl. I don't see it. Suifeng moves Lily's head side to side. What did she see in you that made it worth leaving everything behind? She lets go of the girl's face and sits on her chair. The feeling of spite that builded towards Lily filled her stomach and has made it harder for her to keep standing. She was actually more or less surprised that the girl had said nothing after the rough treatment. Lily stared at Suifeng and the woman glared back at her. She opened her mouth, wanting to snap at the woman for her rudeness, but stopped when she opened her mouth first. I don't see it. Suifeng spoke her thoughts out aloud. I see nothing that makes you, or any of the other Arrancar, worth siding with. What can you possibly give them? Or maybe you're supposed to help them. That would explain why she spent so much time with all of you. What are why? What's Shihoin Yoruchi's plans? Lily's frustration slowly dimmed aways. I'm sorry. Yoruchi's plans? Suifeng glares before saying, I won't ask about your hollow army, Zangetsu, or any other hollow-related topic. She leans over the table. What I want to know is about a certain individual that's helping you, Shihoin Yoruchi. Why the change of topics? Lily carefully asked back. The captain narrows her eyes with no frustration. Because that's what I should have asked the first day we had you here. Your king, Zangetsu, you or any other hollow activity shouldn't have been our top concern. She leans back before continuing, Central 40's excess worries had spread into our minds and clouded what should have been obvious. Lily watched the captain stand up and walk around her again. A bunch of hollows appeared out of the blue in Karakura town. They attacked a group of Shinigami and some captains before disappearing to only get found again later in the hideout of the Soul Society's currently most wanted criminals, Urahara Kisuke and Shihoin Yoruchi. Only to come back later following the order of some Hollow King and have all of Hueco Mundo coordinated. She scoffed. Hollows are too animalistic to find any harmonization with one another. And if Hueco Mundo is under the rule of a king, he's not the one making the call because it is those two who are pulling the strings. Standing across from the girl again, she said, so, what's their plan? They don't have any plans. Somewhat feeling irritated, Suifeng was about to press harder when she realized Lily sounded somewhat clueless too. She put out the anger before it could spread and said, I see. They never told you or anyone else what their actual intentions are. They're only using all of you, just like they use us. She sat back in her seat with a heavy frown. Lily still felt clueless. Why was the Shinigami captain asking about Yoruchi now? What had brought it up? Suifeng's frown still frames her lips. I'm not surprised you look so clueless. Shihoin had probably made sure you're all outside of the loop. It's not the first time she has done it. She has at least told you why they're fugitives, right? I mean, they must have gained all of your trust, so I have to assume they told you. Slowly, the unawareness faded away and Lily said, are you talking about the way they got framed? The captain laughed a little too bitterly. Framed? Her. No. The two who got caught, however, are the ones who broke the law and as partners, Yoruchi had to go save T. Not partners. They're friends and if one of my friends got framed I would do anything to help. Suifeng hid the slight surprise that the girl would cut in sharply with a glare. And help them how? By escaping instead of bringing in evidence that could set them free? Yoruchi's smart and with the power that she has, if she could have put their trial on hold until they found solid evidence. Now it was Lily's turn to frown. Central 46 had already made up their minds about what was about to happen to them. Something slowly clicks inside of Suifeng's head. And what was Central 46's plan? To execute the Vizards and to lock up Urahara and Tessai's powers before being exiled to live in the human world. I'm going to assume the Vizards are those treacherous captains and lieutenants. But, you know, being exiled sounds like light punishment once you know what they did. To be fair, they should have gotten executed too. She watched the girl press her lips together. You know what they did was wrong, right? They got framed. Lily's answers seemed to have snapped Captain Suifeng's patience, and the woman slammed her hands on the table. How the hell can someone frame you for giving the Vizards their hollow powers? No one else at the time besides Urahara Kisuke potentially knew how to do it. You'll be a little surprised to know. Enlightened me. Just before Lily could open her mouth, she noticed a glint behind the captain's eyes again. It was the look of desperation and frustration, but now she knew they were both connected. Whatever the desperation is, it's frustrating her and the only thing they have been talking about that seemed to lack any answers to her, have been about Yoruchi. Yesterday when asking about Zangetsu or anything to do with hollows didn't bring any kind of expression into her eyes, but she clarified she wasn't searching for any answers about them today, just Yoruchi. But now she was asking about what she knew about Urahara and Tessai. Could it be? You know. Lily calmly stated, and all the anger that Suifeng seemed to have been faking disappeared. You know that what happened to them must have been a setup. And what makes you say that? Because you know Yoruchi would do nothing like this. Her eye caught the petite woman's body stiff. You have been doubting Central 46 this entire time about their case, because you know they're innocent. There's no proof of their innocence, so what do I believe in? My captain. They both looked into each other's eyes and Lily saw a barrier between them that's preventing them from reaching the middle ground. She knows how to take down the wall, which is going to be a stupidly enormous gamble. Our hollow army isn't really what you think we're going to use it for. The captain leans back and wonders why the girl's finally talking about it now. From preventing her from talking about Yoruchi. She wanted to scoff at the attempt at changing the subject, but, somehow, it didn't feel that way. Then why have an army if you will not use it to attack Soul Society? Because why else would you build an army? Armies aren't used to just attack. Protection. Suifeng frowned at the idea. Worry we might attack you instead? Your men in the 12th Division haven't figured out how to trace us back and we will keep it that way. Lily carefully reveals information that she knew about Godi 13. Besides, if there's going to be an attack, it's going to happen in Hueco Mundo and not from outside. I see, not everyone agrees with the current king of Hueco Mundo. She tried to guess, but by the look on the girl's face, it wasn't. Before my father could be king, he had to take the crown first. The girl dropped more information for her. So there was another king of hollows? She's also noticing now that the girl's attitude seemed to change from her usual snappy self. As of right now, she was carefully cooperating with her and keeping her attitude in check to the manner of a professional diplomat. We hid from Barragan for as long as we could, but eventually, he was going to find us. So my father acted first and challenged him. With a serious look, she said, if there's a hollow that you're supposed to be worried about, it has to be him. Barragan was building his army for war. That he was going to attack Siriidii with? The captain crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow. As far as our history goes, no hollow has ever breached Siriidii, we have a barrier for that. So unless this Barragan is powerful enough to destroy the barrier, he still has thousands of Shinigami and the captain commander himself to go through if he can get past it. When the girl showed her a smirk that basically spelled out, I know something that you don't, she had to ask. What do you know? If there's going to be an attack, it's going to be happening from the inside of Siriidii. Crap. Is the girl confirming? A traitor? Traitors. How do you know this? Before talking, Lily thought about it first. If there was any person who she could trust in Soul Society about this kind of information, it would be her. Yoruchi's proud of you. The statement seemed to have shocked Suifeng as she drew in a sharp breath. One day she couldn't stop bragging about how well she trained you and how amazing you turned out with your own training that you were able to almost beat Okiura. She told me before that if I want to set my bar high, I need to make sure I can go higher than her little bee. Suifeng felt anger. How dare the Arrancar bring up her name only to spit out some nonsense like that? Also, Okiura. She supposed it must be the name of the Arrancar she fought a couple of years back. But she's actually proud that she almost beat him. The praise actually makes her feel so ashamed of herself. She felt her heart skip a beat in the same way it used to be when Yoruchi would praise her back when she was starting out her life as a member of the 2nd Division. Why does it still have the same effect on her even after she outgrew that stupid phase of her? Does that mean that Yoruchi really cares about her? The Yoruchi that she knew was never a fake? Or is she still the same little girl that's hoping her captain was innocent? The thought made her feel both sad and guilty. While it seemed like her captain still kept her in her heart, she tried her best to stomp her out of it. Was Yoruchi really keeping her inside of her heart? It was pretty clear to Lily just how Suifeng was feeling. But, once again, the only person I can trust with this information is you, because Yoruchi would trust you. Okay. The captain took a breath to calm herself. Tell me everything you know. Lily couldn't stop the small smile, she got help from the inside now. Aizen is the one behind everything. Aizen? Sui Feng narrows her eyes. 100 years later and they're still convinced, no, not convinced. In Central 40th trial records, they said Urahara stated how he stopped Aizen from killing the Vizards. There must be proof of that. How are you sure Aizen is one of them? Lily smirked and said, I know 8 eyewitnesses. Of course, if the Vizards survived the holification, then they could come forth as eyewitnesses. However, Urahara said the same thing about Aizen. However, reports said that there were several eyewitnesses that saw Aizen in his division barracks working on the night of the accident. Can you explain that? Lily actually does, but, can you please stay open-minded with me and hear me out? When the captain nodded, she said, okay, it's hard to explain and probably harder to accept, but I think it had been possible for Aizen to lie about his Zanpakuto's ability. The Arrancar's right, that sounds hard to accept. How? 2 years ago, Aizen showed himself to Ichigo in the park and he swore Aizen had activated his Zanpakuto on him and it seemed to have used it to show Ichigo when he died. It was super convincing for Ichigo because to him, it looked like he was back at the moment of his death because everything looked so real. That sounds a lot like illusions. But there's an explanation for that. Captain Aizen's Zanpakuto is a water-based sword. Refraction of light as it passes from air into water causes optical illusions. That's probably what he saw. But is he good enough to change day into night and bring Ichigo right to the river where he died? The petite captain frowns because she doesn't know if Captain Aizen is that good with his Zanpakuto. How would Aizen also know where Zangetsu died? Okay, let's say Aizen was there. How come the 12th Division wasn't able to pick up his Ryatsu? He wore a cloak that hid Ryatsu. That's logical to Captain Sui Feng. A few decades back and Captain Kuratsuchi created just that. Has the 12th Division captain lost a few cloaks? She probably has to check, and by check, she means to sneak into Kuratsuchi's lab because that man is too prideful to admit someone could steal from under his nose. Who are the other traitors? Believe it or not, one of them actually introduced himself. His name is Ikamaru Jin. Stark told her about Jin once it was apparent that Aizen had joined forces with Baragon, which reminded her. He tried to recruit us a few years back to join forces with Aizen. You can see it didn't work, but he recruited someone much worse. I see. That's why Baragon was building an army. Aizen commanded him. Sui Feng has to wonder if either this Baragon character was really just some weak hollow or if Aizen was just powerful enough to subdue him. Lily shook her head. Baragon and Aizen are working together. Doesn't quite answer the question she asked in her head. There's another person too. His name's Kaname Tozen. The 9th Division captain. Proof. Witnesses, Hirako Shinji and Muguruma Kensei. The captain recognizes those names. I don't understand how they could leave unfinished work like that. Lily frowns and says, you can thank Urahara and Tensai for that. Her frown deepened as the captain stood up, probably ready to leave. I don't know what you'll do, but whatever it is, do it fast. Aizen is about to unravel his plan. How do you know this? Sui Feng walked behind her before pressing the Arrancar's arms, gently, behind her back. Lily let the woman guide her back to her cell. They came to Hueco Mundo to kidnap me to make sure that Ichigo could come and try to rescue me, but what's going to happen is have our forces clash. She turned her head around and said, my father can't leave Hueco Mundo without worrying that Baragon would use the opportunity to attack us. The infamous Hollow is coming to Soul Society. Sounds like her second seat is about to get his rematch him. That's just great. What should I be expecting from Zangetsu? Lily had turned her head back around so the captain didn't see the smile on her lips. My captain can be quite unpredictable. So I don't know. Her smile dropped, and she quietly said, Ichigo probably knows, but I don't think he does, about what he did to your old lieutenant, but when you get to see him, ask him. Soon after that, the walk back to her cell seemed spent mostly in silence, and it wasn't because a Shinigami and a Hollow shouldn't be talking to each other but because her last words seemed to have brought back the cold 2nd Division captain that she knew from day one. Once she's locked behind her cell, she turns to see Suifeng's back. Everything you told me, I'm going to take with a grain of salt. When she left, Lily cursed herself for bringing up her late second seat officer. Nice move, idiot. Lily smiled at hearing her inner Hollow. I thought you weren't real. Thought Ichigo had hit my head a few times too hard and only imagined you. Before her inner Hollow could reply, Hanataro had walked in. I'm here to heal your wounds, Lily-san. Smiling, Lily said, thank you. I guess you had to wait for Captain Suifeng to bring me back. Cocking his head to the side, Hanataro said, I didn't know that Captain Suifeng took you away. Central 46 sent a messenger to the 4th Division to come heal you. Central 46. Well, that's nice of them, although they should have done it yesterday. They didn't allow us. He removed the medic bag and said, but about 5 minutes ago, someone came with orders from Central 46 to heal you. Nice for them to wait after Captain Suifeng brought her back. Almost like anyone can come and get you since you don't have any guards. I don't have any guards. Did she ever see guards? No, she hasn't. How come no one is guarding me? Removing 2 bottles that seemed like ointment from his bag, the boy said, no one is guarding you. I haven't seen or heard a single guard. Only the occasional Shinigami that brings me food. Didn't you see anyone outside? No, I haven't. Is he supposed to report that to Central 46? To his captain. He opens the cells and walked inside without any fear. Lily sat down with a warm smile on his face as she waited for him to treat her. Sheesh, who's making those dumb decisions? She flinched a bit when Hanataro rubbed ointment above her eye. I believe that would be Central 46. Lily frowns. Central 46 has been giving her quite the freedom lately, and that's not sitting well with her. Before she could say anything about it, Captain Zaraki barged in with Shino behind him. Just great. Just as Captain Suifeng stepped out of the guard tower, she saw her lieutenant walking towards it. Did you just interrogate the Arrancar? Toshiro didn't know they had to do it at the break of sunrise. Suifeng didn't answer the question, instead she said, come now, Lieutenant Hitsugaya, we have work to do in the shadows.